Come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today.
So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready.
Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
Well, aloha, everybody. We decided backstage that we're going to do things a little differently today. I'm serving a penance for opening a can of worms, apparently. We have with us today Roger. Everybody knows Roger, and I think Roger is the second most interesting personality we have in the Covenant family. And we were discussing Roger's life. And the many different things that he's done, jobs he's done, careers, tasks in those careers that he's done, and how interesting they are to me, and how I'm a big fan of the Dirk Pitt series, the Pneuma Files. It's a whole book series. I forget the author at this moment. Read them when I was a kid. And Roger's life, to me, just really overlays the Dirk Pitt series. I mean, he's like a superhero in some of the stuff he's done. So, Roger, I mean, these pictures of you working on an oil well, do underwater welding, these manly type things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think we should start back at the very beginning, early on, and my experience in religion before I get along with my later life. Okay. And I grew up in a Christian family. We all believed in Jesus, but nobody really went to church. My father was a Mason and a Shriner, but he never talked about that stuff. And he didn't go to church except for weddings and funerals, and my mother didn't either, but they wanted us to go to Sunday school, me and my brother. And one day, a really fine dressed man came in there, and I was like just 5 or 6 years old, and he bends down next to my ear and he says, "Do you love God?" And I said, "No." He says, "Do you fear God?" And I said, "No, I love God." And he roared back, "No, you must fear God." And it just scared the crap out of me. And when I went home, as soon as I walked in the door, my mother looks at me and says, "What's wrong?" And I told him, that man scared me, and I don't want to go back there anymore. And I didn't go back until I was in my teenage years, where I went to this evangelical church, they're doing like this. And I quit going after a while, and the pastor with them was caught in adulterous relationships with a bunch of the women in the church, and he split, So then I got married and had some kids, and she wanted to go to the Episcopal church. So we went there, and pretty soon the head guy, I don't know what they're called, wanted us to join the church, which requires a tithe. I said, "No, I'm not paying a tithe." She went in and had a meeting with him. He told her to divorce me, which she did. And
wow.
She actually kicked me out of the house and said, "Children, say goodbye to your father."
By the way, which one do you think is a cult? The one that says a woman divorce her husband so I can take her money, or the one that says I don't want your money?
Yeah. So I was homeless. Basically, I had a pickup truck, an S10. Everything I owned was in the back of that truck. I was working as a contract job, so I had a little bit of money, but I didn't have enough to find a place to live. So I was drinking my truck and parking in the back of apartment complexes at night to get some sleep, or dark roadsides, and doing hygiene and McDonald's and all that stuff. And then one day, that part-time job as a contractor turned into full-time employment. And it was a good job. It was a really good job with a major corporation, insurance, benefits, IRA, all that stuff, retirement, pension. And during the course of that job, I was tasked with refreshing and writing new safety manuals and instruction manuals for the employees there, some of the employees there that I had control over. And that went over pretty good. OSHA came out with some new standards. We updated everything and put them in a technical type format, and put them in production, and created a training program then for new employees to come in and refresh your programs for employees already there. And that worked out really good. I did that for 23 years. And then one day something happened and I resigned. it was a bad situation and I wasn't going to participate in it. So I left the company. At that point, I decided I wanted to figure out what the God thing was all about. What was religion? I'd been
Meaning of
affected by
life.
it
Yes.
throughout my whole life, and I wanted to figure it out. So I tried to do that myself, which I failed miserably doing. So then I turned on the TV preachers. Surely they could tell me what was going on, right? So once again, after a couple of months of that, I'm like, man, I have no idea what these people are talking about. They're even contradicting themselves within their own little stories. So I got frustrated. I just stopped looking for a time. And one night I was laying in bed and I got angry. I just got really, really mad. And when a blue collar guy like me gets mad, it gets vulgar real fast. And I literally started using some really colorful language, trying to talk to God. I'm like, God, are you there? Hello? And had that conversation. At the end of it, I was exhausted. I just fell back and fell asleep. Months went on, time went on. And one morning, for no particular reason, I rolled over in bed, hit the clock radio, and what do I hear? The last few seconds of Coast to Coast. No one named Jesus Christ ever lived in first century Judea. What? It's over? What? I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. It's
no
over.
rewind button on AM radio, right?
Here I'm looking for it all the time, and I missed it. So my crude computer skills. I had a laptop IBM that a friend of mine gave me. So I'm trying to find it coast to coast. Oh my God! Finally found the site after a few minutes, and that early in the morning I started on that site. Been there ever since. And I bought the forum there. Somewhere on the forum said that books were available on Claytor's Publishing. So I bought the books. I bought the observation series when they first came out, and all the books, and just been reading since, and studying since. And it's just been, thank you, Craig, for bringing me into this. It's just been a fantastic journey. And that's led me up to the point where I can talk about my jobs. My first job was loading and unloading trucks, manual labor. I've been a blue collar worker my whole life. One day, I decided I was going to join the Army despite my dad, because he didn't want me to join. He was dead set against it. So I had to join just to spite him, right? So I go down to the recruiter's office and he said, son, the war's over, the Vietnam War. We're not taking the people in the Army anymore. We're letting them out. But if you want to come back in a couple of months, might have a truck driving job in Germany for you. So I was deflated. I can't even get a job in the Army.
Right.
So I was just working menial jobs, clerking in a sporting goods store, things like that. And one day I decided, well, maybe I'll go down to the city and see if the city has any jobs. So I did. I went down to the city and walked in. I was 18 years old at the time. And a nice young lady at the counter says, can I help you? I said, see if you guys have any jobs. She says, oh, yes, the personnel manager on the 4th floor. I'll tell him you're on your way up. Okay. So I get 4th floor, guy's waiting for me, shakes my hand, comes sit down. I asked him if he had any jobs. He says, yeah, well, we're putting together a list for some jobs. And if you want, I'll put your name on it. I said, okay, well, what's it doing? He says, we're making a list for firemen. We're going to hire 24 new firemen for the city. I'm like, oh, okay. So he put me on the list, and in November of that year, I started the fire department academy with the fire department here locally. And I did that for 8 years. And during that 8-year period, I worked part-time as a carpenter. And that's where I started to learn my carpentry skills. And when I left the fire department, after 8 years, I became a subcontractor carpentry-wise, and then I got my contractor's license in the state and started building some houses. And that led to the point where I wasn't building enough houses, doing enough carpentry jobs to make a good enough living during that time, because it was like, the 70s, early 80s. Wasn't a lot of work in carpentry because the interest rates were so high.
Right.
So I decided then at that point, I'd go to commercial diver school. There happened to be one not too far away at the Florida Institute of Technology back then. And I went there, 22-week course, came out and started getting diving jobs in different parts of the country, doing industrial diving, offshore diving. did a little bit of everything, industrial diving, like diving nuclear reactor power plants, coal-fired power plants, big industrial companies that have a lot of water intake capacity, doing transfer canals and all that kind of good stuff. On my off time, when I wasn't diving, I had a gig where I did steeplejacking work with a guy that repaired smokestacks, like the 400 foot high smokestacks. So we'd get up on the top of them and replace the caps, the brick caps. They would get corroded over time. And I'll tell you what, on the top of a smokestack, the exhaust coming out of that thing is just as noxious as it could be. It's a really bad smell up there. But I did a few of those jobs because I needed the money.
Well, hold on. So the smokestacks are still operational while you're doing this, and at 300 foot, okay. At 300 foot, there's no. There, okay, good. Because I'm wondering about this PPE you may have to have, or the dive equipment, But okay, they're shut down. But you're still 300 feet in the air, and there's no lift, and you're not hanging off a. I mean, do you climb a ladder up there? I mean, or do you rope up?
No, the first day, one guy climbs up the ladder and hooks up a pulley, and we are lifted up there with a winch.
Okay.
And the guy operating the winch has to know when to stop the winch. Otherwise, it's taken into the block and tackle. So they put a flag on the winch, so he knows where to stop it. And then the thing
that bothers me more actually is the idea of working on an intake, a water intake for a power plant. If somebody hits the switch and that intake goes active, and you're down there diving anywhere near that intake, I can't even imagine the bad things that would happen.
It would be you'd go up into the impellers and be killed, and that's happened before.
Right.
But what you do is there's a lockout procedure for the pumps. So you you shut the power to the pump, you put a padlock on it, with you got the only key, and that's how you go in and do it safely. The problem in some of these power plants there's this one plant in particular in Maryland where this one guy that worked for the plant, his only job was to make sure those pumps stayed running. And he didn't care about anything else except those pumps being running. So he would come up there with hacksaws trying to cut the padlock off. He'd come in with big bolt cutters trying to cut the padlock off. We had to get a security guard stationed there for the duration of that job when we were working to keep that guy away from the padlock. But you are correct. It's a bad day if that pump cranks up.
It's a bad day, baby.
It has happened. It happened to an intake in a power plant, nuclear plant in Florida back in the 80s, where actually 2 or 3 guys got sucked into it. So it was pretty bad. But and so those jobs just kept coming, and I made a pretty good living doing that. So it came to a point where I actually did a job in St. Croix, helping to salvage the underwater habitat that they had down there. Just off.
You recognize the scenery then behind you?
I certainly do. And we stayed at the little hotel that was on the island there. We were about 2 weeks on the job, and it was a really fun job to do. It was easy, clear water, warm water. One of my more favorite jobs. But that just kept getting the jobs and kept getting little jobs like there's a bunch of different offshore jobs. I actually did a treasure dive a couple of times. I found a few cannonballs in a belt buckle. That's about.
Do you like work?
Pardon me?
Do you like work? If you were given the choice of just being independently wealthy or having to work, what's your preference?
Well, I would rather dig a ditch than be idle. It's there's some things that, like technical stuff, like computer stuff, really technical stuff. Give me a shovel. I was like, if you give me a hammer, some nails, and a piece of wood and a saw, I know what to do with it. But you give me a computer and set it in front of me, I'm just going to sit there and stare at it. What do you do with it? How do you operate it? So I'm kind of like Kurt. I'm a pretty analog guy, and Kevin's been helping me out some with the tech stuff. So I'm getting through that. But that's kind of the Cliff's Notes version of it. It's been a pretty exciting life. There were some downfalls. I mean, when my wife divorced me, and I was really, that was my rock bottom point, was when she said, "Say goodbye to your children," or said, that was tough. And getting through that homeless period and then getting that one break that got me where it is today. So, and
I do
then
think that I would think, Roger, that you don't mind if I interrupt for a moment there, Kevin?
No, go
Your
ahead.
interview?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
No, go ahead.
All right. There's just two observations. One is that I don't think we have the capacity to really understand the covenant and God's relationship with people until we've gone through a major fracture in a family relationship, whether it's with a spouse or with our children or with our parents. So I think it's actually an essential part of the learning curve. And the second thing is, well, God in the past has always favored shepherds as the most appropriate avocation for a leadership role in the covenant family. I think today there is a more interesting vocation, one that I have a passion for and have done all of my life, which is home building. If you're a contractor, you know how to design and build homes and manage the construction process. I even think that the restoration process of a home is more interesting than a clean sheet build. But I've done a lot of both. I think that is actually the best training for the whole thought process of trying to establish the covenant family.
Yeah, it certainly set the stage for the rest of my career. Well, being a fireman's cool and all, but there's a lot of downside to it, and I've got some PTSD from that. Actually, it's a tough job. It wears on you over time. So being the contracting part, you're absolutely correct. When you control the whole process, you see how it all fits together. You see the critical path that everything's going to be laid out in, and it really works when it's done well. And that was fun. I actually really, really enjoyed that. The diving stuff is fun most of the time too. There's some really crummy jobs, but talking about intake canals, a lot of the intake canals, they suck water in, and brackish water sometimes, and all kind of weird critters come in there. And there was this one job where the place, the canal and the sump, the pump sump, were just filled with horseshoe crabs. I don't know if you know what a horseshoe crab is, but they're this funny prehistoric looking critter. And you haven't lived until you've been in a situation like that where you got horseshoe crabs crawling all over your body. And it's just that sensation that you can hear them pecking on the helmet and, getting onto the suit. And it was almost like aliens. You see the alien guy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy.
It's that old Roman Catholic torture of tying somebody down, cutting wounds on them, and then building a cage and having rats eat them up alive. It's stunningly horrifying.
Yeah. I got a funny story about one of those jobs up in Maryland on a power plant, and the power plant didn't have any facilities for the divers. You just showed up in a truck, you got out of your truck, you put your stuff together, you went and did the work. Well, it was kind of in the late early fall, and it was getting kind of cold out, and we didn't have anywhere to change. You wear your regular clothes on the truck, and you get out, you got to put on a dry suit or a wetsuit before you can go to work, and we didn't have a place to do that. So the manager says, well, there's a guard shack out there they weren't using right now. You can change in the guard shack. Okay, so we go out and started changing the guard shack, and being divers at the time and traveling around in trucks from job to job, we a lot of times didn't wear undergarments under our clothes. So we take our clothes off real silk and put our suits on and go to work. Well, after a few days, the manager comes up and says, you guys can't do that anymore. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He says, all the women's secretaries up on the second, third floor are looking at you guys through binoculars and they're not getting any work done.
Can you give me their phone numbers, please?
Right.
So there's always
only in town for a few days.
Yeah, only in town for a few days. I'm not looking for a Miss Right, just for a Miss Right now.
Right.
Yeah. So,
that building process is interesting because you're right. There's a completely different set of skills that go from taking architectural drawings and conception of a building with grade and sub work, and then building a building and coming in with making a building dry, and then the trades come in and doing finish work and everything, to taking a building that is there, stripping it down to concrete and steel, and using what is there, because you have blueprints, but these prints they may or may not be exactly as built from a building that was built in 1940, and you run into all kinds of complications with different materials. I mean, we did this to a project down in on Washington Avenue, a hotel we did there back in 2000, and stripping this building that was made in 1940 down to concrete and steel, bumping out the balconies to extend the rooms, and just the concrete alone was the hardest stuff. It was made better than concrete was. We couldn't drill into it to hang signs. I mean, we had to get a special company come in to core drill it. We couldn't core drill it. The contractors locally couldn't core drill it because it was so tough. Okay, here's a plumbing stack. It needs to run up through this chase, and like that chase isn't there. It's like, well, Mr. Architect, how did you come to the conclusion that this chase was here? That all kinds of stuff like that, it's a different skill set from building with a clean slate as to working with, inside the confines of something that's already there. And I think that folds over into our covenant discussion, that being on our toes. We have this conception religiously, okay, when we first come in, because you have all this cultural stuff with you, this structure, okay, of where does my new thinking fit into this structure of my old thinking. That confirmation bias. I like this part of things, so I'm going to take it, I'm going to fold it in, but still maintain my religious ideas, right? Where when to come into the covenant, I want to use the word properly, but to become set apart, you have to strip down everything and come in. And you're doing that in a reverse process, because as you become more and more set apart, you're losing cultural attributes. You're tossing away cultural things that, hey, I was in the military. I just loved the camaraderie. So it hurts a little bit when Craig talks about, how the military is bad and military, because I was a part of the military, or being taking government assistance. I was in the military for 40 years. I get my pension comes from the military, my retirement. What, do I not take that money? No. We're not saying that, but slowly, little by little, stripping away those cultural things that we think of, I think that's very conducive to that's why I love the Hebrew, because I wasn't a Hebrew speaker. And so as I learned the Hebrew, I don't have those cultural, that cultural crap that builds on me with a word. Sadak is right, is Sadak in my mind. Righteous brings in all this other crap with it, So that's why, I love stripping things down and starting from new, because then you have a good foundation to build on. So.
Yeah, let me speak to two of those things that we've been drawn into, and then speak to the third. There is value in both the clean conception, being the architect and the contractor in building a home. It's one of my favorite things to do. I built a home in Virginia where I envisioned blending Thomas Jefferson's Monticello with George Washington's Mount Vernon, taking the floor plan of one, the two-dimensional space of one, and the elevations of the other, and blending together to create an ideal home aesthetically, and then oversaw the construction of it. Tremendous challenge, tremendous fun, but to go from an idea to something tangible is a tremendously gratifying thing to do. The difference in the remodel is, I feel in the remodel, it's more what we're doing in the covenant, because in the grand scheme of things, as it relates to the covenant and Torah, God is the architect, and he has designed what we have. So we're not creating the plan. In fact, we are the plan. But in the remodel, we're taking the plan that has largely been trashed, that has deferred maintenance, that's been neglected, that everything has grown up around, all of the weeds and everything that has deteriorated to, there's beautiful bones there, but the rest of it has become hideously ugly. And I see that as our job in the covenant. So it's the remodel project. And the remodel project is actually much harder. It's actually more expensive to remodel a home than it is to build one from scratch. And this project, this home that I'm broadcasting from here that Rich shows on our other programs, this was a home that we essentially scraped to bare concrete and remodeled. It's a much more difficult process because you have to constantly encounter disappointments. Nothing is square. Nothing is as it's supposed to be. And everything becomes a challenge to overcome. So you're presented with multiple unforeseen challenges to overcome every day. And then you must come up with the solution that most people miss, and then being able to direct a crew how to implement that solution. And then when it's done, you're the only person that appreciates what you've achieved.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
else will know this was a problem because you've dealt with it, and you established an entirely different perspective. Like I tell everyone who comes to a construction site that is a remodel to throw away your damn level. The level is useless in a remodel. Plumb is meaningful. Parallel lines are meaningful. No one can tell whether it's level. They can tell if the original wasn't level and you've made the new wall level and they don't line up. They can tell that, and it looks really bad. So we're going to throw away the level and we're going to deal with reality. And that's the remodel. It's constantly being challenged to deal with the remodel. Now, the third thing that you mentioned is the experience that you had in the military. And I am of the Roger School, where earning licenses was important to me. I have earned a pilot's license, a captain's license, and a scuba license, along with many other kinds of licenses, by learning what was necessary to earn the authority to be able to do those things and the competency to do those things, and executing within a framework of having been schooled in a licensed environment. Like diving is dangerous, flying an airplane is even more dangerous. And so learning how to do those things and operate them safely so that others can trust your manipulation of the controls. Take somebody up on a private airplane, particularly a jet, and you're the only person there that's qualified to fly it, and you bring them up into the co-pilot seat and say, I want you to watch. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen so nothing will freak you out, but don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything.
It's really an amazing experience to do. It's just it's something extraordinary, and you can take pride in being able to do it, and to do it safely and well and repeatedly and consistently. But it was the same approach I took to translating. We're going to do it by the book. We're going to do it consistently. We're going to have a standard operating procedure. We're going to come up with a process, and it's going to be thought through and rational and reasonable and appropriate. And I think it's important. So as it relates to the military, I came very close to joining the military when I was younger, and I would have, if the draft had continued. I was actually in the first year where they still had the lottery, but decided not to draft anybody through that lottery. My number was 4, so I would have gone to Vietnam, and Vietnam War was still raging. I'm a really old guy. It was still raging, and I am not the kind of person who would have been a sluggard doing nothing. I would have been killed. There's almost no chance I could have survived that had I gone. Now that I know that the Vietnam War was based on a lie and we made a bad situation worse, I am grateful that I did not go. And I'm also grateful that I wasn't in the military, particularly based upon what I have learned about the Department of Defense, now called the Department of War. You had a favorable experience in the military, but knowing what you know now, would you enter the military?
You talking to me?
Me?
No, Kevin,
Yeah.
yeah.
No. My example was people I've talked to, in
Oh,
the
okay.
covenant that were in the military. I've never been in the military. Oh, they won't
Oh,
take
okay.
me. No.
All right.
Yeah.
No, okay. All right.
My
So,
experience was same as my
yeah.
experience was same as you, Craig. My number was 13 that year.
Okay.
We were born in the same year, so
Oh, so you're as old
I'm
as I am.
I'm 70. Yeah,
Okay, and I'm 71.
and
Okay.
yeah, so I was sitting there watching it too.
Okay.
My
So
number was
you and I were in the same boat.
right.
Yes. Yeah. We and probably based on our personalities, we both would have been dead today had they taken us.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I was watching something today on Facebook, and I have to go to Facebook for no other reason than to populate the blog page because I think we have to have a news page on our yadayada.com site. Without a news page on that site, then the Covenant family loses track of where we are and this world that we're in. And so I think it's absolutely essential. We cannot be cocooned. We cannot be isolated. And so I was watching the feed, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that feed in just a moment. But one of them was a video of IDF soldiers. These are just low-line IDF soldiers, and they're walking down a heavily forested dirt road, and you can see them. They're all scared to death. They're looking for who's going to shoot them. When is the ground going to explode underneath them? And they're there to conquer territory that they will abandon the next day. They will walk away from. And I remember not only reading, but seeing the videos and the testimony of those soldiers in Vietnam that conquered places like Hamburger Hill, a meat grinder. And the disgusting thing is they were dropped off by helicopter to go climb this hill that was filled with Viet Cong that had the high ground and were dug in and could inflict 10-to-1 casualties on Americans. And they did. And then when Americans got to the top, they fluttered around the hill and began to pick off the Americans, or they came out of their holes in the ground and began to pick off the Americans. And then the Americans decided that, well, they would bring in close support vehicles and start shooting at what they thought was the enemy. And there was more friendly fire casualty than there was casualty from the enemy. And we would lie about it, but we'd tear our own men to pieces. And then we would drop napalm to try to deter the enemy, and we would burn our own men alive. And after all of that, and after all of the sacrifice, and then finally prevailing, and they've conquered the hill, they would send in the helicopters to pick up the men and to bring them back and abandon the place. And that was the way we fought the Vietnam War. And that's what Jews are being asked to do in the IDF in Lebanon. It's as if nobody ever thinks it through or ever learns. And from my point of view, it's incredibly disgusting. Very, very sad what we're witnessing.
Yeah, it's the downside of institutionalized personality because those soldiers, the focus is the mission, and then the mission's done, and then it's the next mission, and then the focus is the next mission without ever seeing any sort of big picture of where is this going. It's just this step without, because it's not until 3 or 4 weeks later you're like, wow, we were just in this neighborhood with this. We're back on this mission again. Didn't we do this mission 3 weeks ago? Why did we do that mission? That you start to really look and rethinking yourself about, wow, this is not this doesn't jive with me. This is not good for me, because
No.
The survivability of it's just this mission. But when you start to think, you're like, oh, this is going nowhere,
And there are 3 types of reactions to it. One of those is I was drafted on this date and cleared from basic training on this date, and I was deployed on this date. And to honor my commitment so that I'm not court-martialed and jailed, I must survive to this date. You're counting down the days that you have to survive. And all you're trying to do is survive to the end.
Sure.
The second response is, this is insane. what I'm being asked to do politically and militarily is insane. And so there's only one response that I have that I can survive this kind of insanity. This happened also in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the soldiers drug themselves into oblivion. They medicate themselves into oblivion because no human being can deal with this. It is why the highest suicide rate in the world was the U.S. soldiers that were sent and had to engage in Desert Storm in the Iraqi and Afghani wars because they were asked to deliver freedom for people that were trying to kill them. Right. And that there was obviously no understanding of the situation, and that we were clearly making a bad situation worse. And back home, the media and the politicians were trying to spin this as a noble, heroic thing, when it was the antithesis of that. So that's the second approach. And the third approach is what we're experiencing again today in the U.S. military with enlistments. And that is that, for the most part, the worst of us join the military. Those people who like hunting and think hunting other men would be a wonderful way to express their desire to have a gun and to be able to have power over life or death. I can't think. I'm not particularly moral. I've got no purpose in life. But me being able to impose a life and death situation over others is appealing to me. And that is it's the worst of humanity. And yet, in record numbers, because of Twistians and MAGA and Trump, they are signing up for the military in record numbers. And this is indeed especially troubling, because the U.S. military, I don't think, has ever been a force for good. I think it has always made bad situations worse, and the brief period that there's nothing you can say about the First World War, the Viet Cong War, or the war in Afghanistan or Iraq, and now the war in Iran, or the war in Syria, or the war we fought in Libya. There was nothing that can be said positive about any of those.
Right.
They were all negative. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all negative from beginning to end. And for the most part, if you actually pull back far enough to think it through, there's really nothing we did that was worthwhile in World War II. I'm a fan of Patton, and I admire the American freedom to those that were in the prisoner of war and the concentration camps, and the way that he handled himself in that process. But the fact of the matter is, what we did in that war and how we went about it was asinine. And the consequence of the way we fought that war, both in the Pacific and in Europe, caused a worse situation to materialize than the one we were fighting. And so it's not the most heroic generation. It's not the greatest generation. It was a deadly and stupid generation doing the wrong things. And we absolutely, unequivocally handled both the Pacific and the European theater in World War II in an asinine fashion. And many people died and were tortured as a result of our stupidity. So I am just not. I've never been a fan of the military. I'd have to say that during my patriotic times, when I was a Twistian and I was a zealot patriot in my youth, by the time I was 30, I was done with it. I had realized there's no justification for any of this. If you just stop believing for a moment and start thinking, and you study the evidence, and you realize, the Maine wasn't sunk by an enemy. We sunk it. The Lusitania was a ploy. The Gulf of Tonkin never occurred. And when you realize how we got into these wars, why they occurred, Trump's justification for Iran, it's a complete lie. Bush's justification for Iran and Afghanistan, or Iraq and Afghanistan, a complete and utter lie. you lose total faith and confidence in your government, and you become what God wants you to be, overtly opposed to those things.
Yeah,
One of the
that's
go ahead.
same with me. Was in my 30s, I became adversarial to government in a
Mhm.
in a you know an active way, and it wasn't political. It wasn't. I didn't become a Marxist and go out and chant and hey, this government's no good, but my government's better. No, all governments. I knew that there was no good system. It was the one that was the good system was the one that was gonna leave me alone the most.
Correct.
That was
Correct.
yeah.
What you found out is the line that I have been trying to convey and underscore now for a better part of a decade, which is that it is rare, but it is possible for an individual man or woman to be good, while most are not. It is not possible for collective man to be good. When we gang together, whether it's in a military force, patriotic force, empire, nation, or large religious institution, humankind becomes hideous. It's why God wanted to eliminate the human experience. He was disappointed with Adam, but didn't withdraw from Adam, just simply set Adam out into the world to see if he could grow up and develop some character and show some value. But when he watched Nasalma man become many, he just said, this isn't tenable. This isn't fixable. This is not resolvable. I want to end it. And, he essentially had completely given up. And then he looked over at Chinook, who he had developed an affinity for. And he says, I can imagine that conversation. And, I think Chinook is saying, wait a minute. You weren't wrong in creating man. It's just that many men are not good together. So let's see if we can reboot the system. I'm game. Come on, let's come up with a plan. And God was so remorseful at the time of creating man and so regretting. I think it was actually a discussion between the two. And the story of Noach is the result of all of that. And that means that we were unique, Kevin, and it probably is true of Roger, in our opposition to largeness, our opposition to religion and politics and the like, is that we didn't oppose them. Like, I don't oppose Trump by the same way that a Democrat does who is a Marxist.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I know Marxism is a heinous situation. I mean, I was in Red China within weeks of the time that Nixon opened it up, long before enterprise zones. And I was there when the enterprise zones were first created. I was in the Soviet Union when it was totally locked down under propaganda, and made my way all the way through the entire Soviet Union. I have seen what socialism does. I was in Eastern Europe when there was an Iron Curtain. I know the comparison. Today's liberals don't.
Right.
They don't have that wisdom, and they don't know that collectivism brings out the worst in humanity, and it always does.
Even in the height of Torah observance, I'm going to call the height of Torah observance, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Dode and Solomon, that era of Yisrael, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything was hitting in all cylinders. There were still only 36,000 or so that rallied around Dode, right? I mean,
right.
So it's even in the height, collective man was still mostly bad. I mean,
let me even tell you about the man. From the time he was up to 20 years old, he was a really exemplary young man. From 20 to 30, he ran around the wilderness with his tail between his legs, afraid of his own shadow. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't good.
Right.
From the time he was 30 to the time he was 60, he was rotten, really rotten. Power corrupted him. Government corrupted him. Money corrupted him. He had from 30 to 60. His life is just a legacy of one mistake after another.
Yeah.
everything that we know that is worthwhile about Dowd actually took place in the last 10 years of his life. And so even with Dowd, that's just what we see. Now you look at Solomon. Everything about Solomon that had any value took place from the time he assumed the throne, which I think he was under 20 years old, to the time that he began marrying pagan women for the purpose of political power. And at that point, it's the same thing with Dowd to a large degree. Neither of them had dutiful parents. I mean, if your mommy is Bathsheba, who's a whore, that's not a good thing. And Dowd didn't know his mother, and his father was a jerk who abandoned him. And so he never developed an appreciation of what it's like to be a father or a son or of how to treat women. Mm-hmm. And so when he went into Jerusalem with 17 wives and girlfriends, and then began to collect more, you knew that there was something desperately wrong. If you have an itch, that 17 women won't scratch, the problem isn't with the women.
Right. Right.
I think it's largely why we look at the last word picture, and Ruth, who we now know is Leah, told her son that your view of women is back asswards. You're beauty first, skin deep, and you've got no concept of brilliance or what character is under the surface there. And that was your whole mistake with Bathsheba. And you need to have a whole different way of looking at women, or your whole life is just going to be miserable and unproductive. Because, oh, by the way, I don't care if you are king. If you can't have a productive relationship with a woman, you can't be productive. Right. You will leave a legacy of ruin. Your own home will be ruinous, which his was. Yeah, it's so much more interesting when we see the picture as it really was laid out. And we realize that the fact that Dowd wasn't perfect, I mean, he was about as imperfect as you could be, is the essence of the story. That's the beauty of the story. He started off well. He fell to hell in a handbasket. He ended well. The man who had fallen ultimately stood taller than any of us have ever stood.
Oh, yeah. It's a big redemption arc when we bring in 33 CE, whenever we bring in a Pesach AL, right?
Yes,
I mean, there's quite the redemption arc there, you know?
Absolutely. And it's the power of that story. And
enjoying those fruits on Teruah.
Yeah.
I mean, when he comes back on Yom Kippurim, enjoying the fruits of that work. So
yeah, Roger, when I hear your story, and we're going to go to the news next year, and I can see that Kevin's already got the first article up. I have talked about us creating 4 Yahweh blogs, new ones. One is Thinking Torah, one is Loving Torah, one is Covenant Family, and one is the Yada Yah Book Club. And I have chosen people that I think would be ideal for Thinking Torah, which is a more intellectual analysis of profoundly important insights that can be derived from the Torah. And I have fingered both you and Kevin for that. I also think that somebody like Mike Beati, who is very cerebral, somebody like James Bowen, who is very cerebral, Doe, who is exceedingly articulate and bright. I think there are a number of individuals who are perfectly suited for that. And what's interesting to me is a man who depicts himself as blue collar is one of the most profoundly effective and articulate thinkers and writers about the Torah and our situation today.
Well, thanks. I've thought about this on myself, and I'm inspired by you. by your translations. I'm inspired by Yahweh and His Word, and all the other people that I read their comments on the. I'm inspired by those folks with those words, and so all I'm doing is kind of putting everything together in little bits and pieces packages with that. It's amazing. I to be honest with you, Craig, 100%, I'm not that smart. I'm not smart enough to really work on the level that you and these other people work on. I'm just not. And so I need help. And I'm getting the help from.
I don't think so. I disagree. I just
Yeah.
disagree. You have intellect where it matters, and there is a disciplined, open-minded yet disciplined. This is a really difficult thing for most people to appreciate. To completely open up everything, so you're no longer in the box. To obliterate, dynamite the box. The box is completely gone, and now you need to have a disciplined approach without bumpers on the side. It is something so few people can do. In the academic community, they have to not only maintain their position within the box, they've got to put mirrors on the box so that everything they do mirrors what the box tells them they should be doing. And they can't think outside the box. And if you cannot think outside the box, what you'll end up doing is what the cult that we were speaking of yesterday has done. You focus on a dot that somehow tickles your fancy, and you completely ignore, because you've created a box around yourself and your conspiracy, you completely ignore that there's a billion times more evidence saying that that's the dumbest thing you have ever thought and said. And so you have to be able to have the discipline to obliterate the box and still be able to think within a structured, disciplined, orderly parameters. And whether you learn that from being a diver, where if you don't follow the procedure, you're dead, or if you are a contractor, where if you don't follow the procedures, which are called codes, the house falls. Maybe it's a combination of those things. Maybe it's being kicked out on your ear and having to sleep in a car and saying, I need to figure this out and make something of my life. And maybe it's that experience, but it doesn't change the fact that we have all read over the past year what you have posted. And the fact remains that there are two people whose posts are always the most thoughtful and articulate. Always. We've been doing this now for 18 months. And when I was able to see the post because of Facebook in particular, yours and Doe's were the two that were consistently the most thoughtful and articulate. So you can't run from this. No. It's your badge, and you need to wear it.
Okay, well, it does go back to the old working days when you had procedures. Now, some of the jobs there were no procedures, and we had to make the stuff up as we went, or the procedures were outdated, and we needed to improve them on the job in order to not get killed. So and that kind of transferred over into my more office type work when I was doing the procedures manuals, because once again, you're dealing with life and death situations, suction hazards and animal hazards and all kinds of stuff that you have to deal with. So yeah, there is something there where you have to create a document that everybody can understand. It's written in a verbiage that's not too technical, but yet the managers can deal with it, and yet the working, the guys actually doing the job, the men and women that are doing the job, can actually do it and get it done safely. So you're working on two levels. I got to get it approved, and it's got to work. So yeah, you are right that's what boils into it. Now there was a time, there was an incident. I want to call it an incident. There was a night when I was listening to you, and it was right around the time that the Hive left. I think it was just after the Hive left. And you were talking about it, and you had some of the Torah verses up there that were related to it, and a Hebrew word that was translated tempest. came up in the show, and I immediately connected that with Shakespeare's Tempest. There's a play about the Tempest, and it concerns a group of traveling seafarers that are crashed up against an island in a violent storm, and they're using all kind of incantations and spells to try to get out of it. And then there's Miranda's speech about, oh, brave new world and such people in it. So that's kind of the connection that I made there. So with me, it's a connection somewhere. When you're talking, if I was listening to you right now, I'm taking notes. I got a pad and a pen. I'm taking notes, and I'm putting those notes together kind of in my head. And then at the end, I kind of amalgamate them and make them sound kind of good to me. And I'm posting. That's how I do it. But it's about the connections that I can make with it.
So, Kevin, how many people would be on the list of those who would define themselves as not very smart and yet equate Shakespeare to a word used in a vlog,
and quote it and quote Shakespeare
and quote the Shakespeare, not just relate it, but actually be able to quote from the play and to say how the play is applicable? Is that a fairly short list of people that would say, I'm not very smart, and oh, by the way, here's this quote from Shakespeare that came to mind as you were speaking of the Tempest?
He just illustrated the point I was going to make was from the time I was 7 years old into high school, I was surrounded by very high IQ individuals. Okay, we were set apart into this experiment kind of thing. And one thing I can do is I can recognize intelligence from being surrounded like that. I can recognize, and it manifests in so many different ways. I mean, we had one kid that brilliant theater mind, could quote lines, sing, perfect pitch, the whole 9 yards, and couldn't add or subtract worth a darn. Okay. I mean, it wasn't in his wheelhouse, and then you had the ones that, so, I mean, this intelligence thing that they want to quantify through IQ. Okay. It definitely manifests itself in different ways. There are many high IQ individuals in prisons right now. Okay. So, Roger, you're no dummy. Let me just say that, okay?
Thank you.
So, you've got it.
Yeah.
So,
I look at IQ as different than the test, and that is, I consider it processing speed. I can drive down the street and I can recognize 100 things that are happening around me. Part of being a pilot is you're never in the moment. You're a minute, or sometimes in an aircraft, you're an hour ahead of where you are. And you're always thinking way ahead of where you are. So you're prepared for anything that happens. Actually, it's been with me in a car where I will have already perceived around that corner that is a likely place for somebody to lose track of where they are and come out into our lane. And there is a 500-foot cliff off to this side. And under this case, I have to actually go on the wrong side of them if we're going to survive. If that person comes around the corner and it's a blind corner and you can't see them, and to have them do it and have me make that maneuver and have us survive.
Right.
So this is, it's a very different way of processing the world around you. And I think that is what we're witnessing in both you and in Roger, is a very fast processor that's able to recognize and process information and just do so more rapidly than others can do it. Because I watch people trying to figure out what they're going to do with the pothole in front of them, or the stop sign that's up there. And when the light changes, you can see that it takes them 1,001, 1,000. Oh, that light changed, didn't it? What is? Oh, yeah. I'm supposed to push the accelerator and I have to take my foot off the brake. Okay, I suppose I should do that now. And I'm sitting there behind them going crazy. I had already decided you needed to do this before the light changed.
Right. Right. It's clear. It's almost clairvoyance. You're like, I know this guy in front of me is going to hit that pothole. I know he doesn't see it. I can tell by what's going on in that car that it's going to wreck his car. And so let me just stop and wait for him to hit that pothole.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. And anticipating things like that is essential to us being able to be prepared for what's coming. That's a huge part of this job in the covenant, is that you want to be ahead of where we are so that you can prepare people for what's coming without being dictatorial. If I tell you this is what's going to happen around every bend, that's not going to help you. If I prepare you so that you're equipped for a series of eventualities, and then you are observant enough to recognize that one of them has materialized so that you can guide your life and your family and those you love correctly, then we have achieved what we're striving to accomplish.
To get back to earlier, there is something about being set apart and being in the covenant that it's not for dummies. Okay. I have talked to a lot of you. I have met most of you, or many of you. I have, I have spoken with you on the phone, and we're all pretty gifted in one way or another. I mean, this whole, oh, well, I'm analog, I can't, no, man, you got to have the want to, and you can do it. Okay. You can figure it out, and it's stay in your wheelhouse.
Right. And we all do have different processing speeds. That is true. And you don't have to be processing the information at the same pace, particularly if you're reliant on somebody that is trying to process it and give it to you so that you can now consume it and deal with it. One of the things that you said, Roger, is that if somebody gives you a hammer and a nail, you know what to do with it. You know what the purpose is of the hammer and the nail? It only has one purpose. Well, yes. How? How does the hammer and the nail work to build things?
You have to strike the nail with the hammer.
Well, of course, yes. And what does it accomplish?
Join things together.
There it is. It makes the connection, doesn't it?
Make the connections.
It joins things together. It makes the connection.
Exactly.
And you need to know where to position that nail and where to position that hammer to join things together the right way. And if you consistently know where to place that nail and to drive that hammer to make the proper connections, you're going to end up with a house, aren't you?
Pretty soon, yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, you're going to end up with a junkyard and black thumbs.
Yeah, and you find out pretty quick which one it's going to be.
Yeah. By the way, though, you are old school, because having built a bunch of homes here recently, one of the things I have noticed, there are no hammers and there are no nails.
That's right. I know.
No one builds with hammers and nails anymore. They all build with torque wrenches, drill drivers is what we call them, which are simply drills that can be ratcheted down with a choke on them. Such that they will drive a screw without overdriving it, or you can choose the tension to which you want that screw to stop, and very specific kinds of wood screws at various lengths and different kinds of threads and compositions. But the screw is a vastly superior means of making a connection.
Yes.
And the nice thing about the screw is if you've screwed it in the wrong place, you can take it out and reposition it. So we use screws now, Roger. It's been a while maybe since you've been a carpenter.
Yeah, we didn't have them. The nail guns were just coming out when I was doing that. The Senko nail guns, and that was a godsend too, because it spared your thumb from getting smashed.
Oh yeah, the nail guns with the pneumatic pressing in of the nail. You're not having to hold the nail anymore, and the head of the nail is no longer visible. And you can get all manner of these things, and it's just you tap it and it releases the pneumatic the air power behind the nail and pushes it in, and the nail gun became you're still swinging it, and it weighs more than the hammer, and you still have to have strong forearms to do it all day, but you're swinging it to trigger the release. But it weighs more, so it's if you're not used to it, it's going to take your forearm and it's going to
it takes a while,
wreak havoc with it. But you're not doing, like, if you're on a roof and you're trying to put in nails, and you need as they say on the ship in the rough seas, you have one hand for the ship and one for whatever it is, that the line or whatever you're working on. Well, with driving a nail, you need three hands, one to, find the next nail, and one to position the next nail, one to hammer the next nail, and you need the fourth hand to hold on to the roof so you don't fall off. So, we've had some advances, but they're not even using nails anymore for the most part. It's all screwed together.
Yes.
And so we continue to progress. And by progressing, you have a picture behind you of a factory that's a 19th century factory. But I wanted to make the point. Donald Trump has tried to sell the world on the idea of tariffs because he thought that was his way of being able to lash out and punish countries that didn't acquiesce to his desire to be considered as der Fuhrer of the world. And he sold those tariffs by saying these countries have stolen from America and they have stolen American jobs, and we want those factories back. And if we impose these tariffs, that's what we will accomplish. No. I was in a unique position in my life. I've lived a lot of lives, I think. Well, I have lived a lot of lives, but in this particular life, I had the opportunity to build factories in America. I built a bunch of them. And I experienced what it's like to build a factory in America without any support. The distribution facilities are terrible in America. We're still using trucks as opposed to railroad or ships. We just inept. All the support, if you need dyes, if you need molds, they take years to produce and they cost 20 times, 30 times more than they should. You're paying your employees many, many times what they actually receive and what is appropriate for them because of all the government interferences. You can hire people, but you can't fire people, which means you have no influence over their desire to work. The educational system is not educating people so that they can think. And so you might as well have a machine there because the person that you've hired is not able to respond in an intelligent way. And because of the lack of morality in our society, because we've stopped teaching logic and rhetoric and morals, most of the people that you hire are going to turn against you. It is not possible today to establish a old school manufacturing plants like the kind that I did, where you had assembly lines and people making things. It cannot be done. I did it, but ultimately I realized I was rowing up a waterfall. I went to Asia, first to Taiwan and then to China, opened the first enterprise zones in China. Not because of cheap labor, because the difference in labor cost as a factor of the overall finished cost of a product was typically the difference in labor. If they were 1/3 of our labor cost, but the labor was 20% of the price of the product, the price to make the product, it was immediately offset by the additional cost of transportation. But the transportation and the duties were a small part of it. The bigger part of it is inventory is the death of a business. If you have to have large inventories, that inventory will become obsolete and there's no way you can get rid of it. And when your capital is tied up in useless inventory, it is a killer for the business. And GAAP accounting systems, generally accepted accounting practices, make you burden your inventory in a means that creates the impression of profitability, where that the entire company could be dead and yet look profitable because of this burdening of inventory. It creates so many problems that the last thing you want to do is offshore your manufacturing. And I had so many. I'm a fairly inventive guy, and I drew and conceived thousands of patents. And what I found is if I offsourced those overseas, well, I could get them made and of a great quality and could be selling those designs within a matter of months as opposed to a matter of years, and do so affordably. That there were unscrupulous people who would take your tools and make products for other people, and you would find your
patents
customers
don't mean
being able to
anything
go
in China.
right around you, and to enforce a patent is an exceedingly expensive undertaking. So, I can tell you nobody went to China because of cheap labor. And that thought that is the excuse that the dunderhead has, that I can tell you what they have is they don't have what I have. They have no actual experience. They have no actually understanding of the process. And what we find today is that after China became bifurcated, China is a communist government with a free enterprise economy. The economy in China is more free enterprise than America by a long shot. America has a socialized economy. China has a free enterprise economy in the enterprise zones. And when they instituted those enterprise zones, of which I built some of the very first factories, what they did is they unleashed potential. Free enterprise works. It creates value. And they turned China from not even a top 20 economy into now the number one manufacturing economy in the world. And they did not do it based on cheap labor. They did it on creating an opportunity for it to be done. And then men and women with drive and with capital and with ingenuity and with drive made it happen. That's what worked. And today, what China has realized is that people are not the answer for making stuff anymore. We're not good at it. We're just not good at it. People have been really degraded. The last 30 to 40 years have been really rough on people. The last two generations are indoctrinated. They're not educated, and they have no drive. They have no grit. They have no character, no ability to make intelligent decisions. Even in China, they're lazy. And lethargy has become the order of the day, and an entitlement mentality. All the young Marxists out there throughout Europe and China and the United States, I want what you have. I don't want to pay rent because I think that I'm being robbed. I don't want to pay a high price at the market. I think I'm being robbed. I don't want to pay for my own health care. I want it given to me. I don't want to pay for my education. I want it given to me. I don't have to show up for a job. I think everybody should have a livable situation. They don't want to work. They're just lazy and greedy. And so China has realized you aren't going to make stuff with people. And they aren't. They're making stuff with machines. And so as Trump goes to China today, the first tour he's going to have is a factory that doesn't have any lights, because the machines don't need lights to operate. And it's just a waste of energy. And his tariffs were never going to bring jobs back to America, because Americans aren't interested in working in a factory job. The only job that is popular among today's Gen Z is being an influencer. That ain't going to happen. And it's just a crying shame that we have so many ignorant people in the media and in social media trying to influence people that have absolutely no concept of economics, free enterprise versus socialism and fascism versus communism, and what drives human invention and productivity. You know, you look at Islam. There are no effective Islamic companies. Muhammad didn't work. He was a bum. The only work that the first Muslims engaged in was armed robbery. Now, if you call that work, then I guess they were industrious. Islam was conceived as a criminal enterprise. And so if it wasn't for the black ooze that came up from underneath those sands, and then pirating the development of the extraction, distribution, and refinement of that black ooze, they'd have nothing. You know, you look at a place like Dubai. Every building is built by slaves, non-Muslim slaves, and they are slaves. They're brought into those countries, their passports are taken, and then they're offered a fraction of what they were originally promised. They have no way to live, and they live worse than slaves did during the period where slavery was legal in other countries. It is all slave labor and all a product of the black ooze. And it's repulsive. And so in Marxism, there's no incentive. It's wealth redistribution until there's no wealth left to redistribute.
We're all poor and hungry. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's the only guarantee, is that rather than being some people who are more successful than others, everyone is poor and hungry. And everyone is controlled. And we don't have a generation today that is capable of processing that. And I would say the last two have been incapable of processing it, which, if it wasn't for gray hairs, of which we, the three of us, all sport here, if it wasn't for the fact that there's still a remnant of older people, God could not prevail. This is really the last shot of prevailing with humankind. And it's going to be few and far between, because there's way too few people who are able to use their neshama and exercise their conscience. What do you think? Do you think I'm being too judgmental, or do you think it makes sense?
What,
Roger?
Roger?
Of course it makes. Of course, I don't think you're being too judgmental at all. I think it makes perfect sense. And I've seen the decline in American factory workers. I mean, going back to what you were saying about the war, you get a couple of Army guys together, especially from the latest wars, and they're talking about body counts.
Mm-hmm.
In the factories, they're thinking about how many cars they can produce in a year. Well, they're not having those conversations now in the factories, because they're not there to have it. It's all computerized. You got a couple of guys running the machines, right, making sure they're working. And even on jobs, or I've hired subcontractors to do work for me recently, and they don't have the same work ethic that I saw back 20, 30, 40 years ago. And they'll get the job done usually, but it's, to me, in my experience, it's just not the same.
When I started remodeling on this home, what I found is there was only one guy that I found that had an old school work ethic. He happened to be an old school guy. He's our age. He could still swing a hammer at the best of them. He actually figured out a use for hammers, but it was not in making connections. You have to bang things apart sometimes, or bang them together, and he was quite good at doing that. And he was the lead among all of the trades, but he could not hire, and I could not supplement him with people with the right work ethic. And so I finally said, I might as well try to do something good. And I took young boys from the local community who had grown up without a father, without much incentive. And I said, I can teach them the trade, and then I can have them literally live at our house, and I can mentor them what it's like to have a work ethic. And maybe one of the 30 or 40 benefited, and I'm not sure even if that one really benefited. And some of them ended up taking their lives out with drugs or guns, and one actually stole almost $30,000 from me. So it's trying to care, trying to lift up and to help this younger generation. It's fraught with peril.
It certainly
is. I had two guys that I had hired that I got out of jail because I thought they were wrongly convicted by a dirty cop, and they were wrongly convicted by a dirty cop, and I went against the judge and the whole system, and successfully got them out of jail, only for them to both went right back to the lifestyle they had.
Yeah, I think the article proves your point, where China, 1 billion people, right? They have labor for days, and they have labor for days that is cheap labor. And what is China investing in right now? Right? They're not
robotics,
lightless factories. Yes.
Right. You look at BYD versus Tesla. Both are robotic factories, but BYD took a different approach than did Tesla. And I remember Elon Musk, when he was introduced to BYD, he just mocked them and said, they'll never be a threat. Well, now, if it wasn't for the 100% duties that the American government puts on electric vehicles from China, Tesla wouldn't even exist. Wouldn't exist. So open playing field, they wouldn't even exist. And that's because the difference with BYD, it means build your dreams, is that they are 100% vertically integrated. They make all their own batteries. They make their own electronic chips. They make all their own motors, everything. They will actually fabricate the wire for the motors. I mean, they are completely vertically integrated. They have everything that I understand other than the mines for the raw material. So they make their own tires. I mean, they don't buy anything. They make everything. And they even have their own delivery ships. If you want to, BYD has their own ships to deliver their cars. It is a turnkey process from hello to goodbye. And as a result, they're offering a car that is 2 or 3 times more advanced and better styled for a third of the money.
Exactly. You know, there's an analog to that too with China. Back in the, I think it was the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, Rolex decided to retool their factory. And they put all their tooling into storage. And sometime later, China came in and bought up all the Rolex tooling and started making Rolex clones. The early Rolex clones weren't all that good. They were easy to tell the difference. But now, you buy a Rolex Submariner clone, you have to take it to a Rolex dealer and have them take the movement apart to see whether or not it's made in China or not. They're that good. And there are stores in the Middle East, used to be, I don't know if they got blown up by now, but where you could go in, there were fake watch stores. You could buy a fake Rolex or a Panerai or a Longines or whatever it was. That's the one you wore out in public. Your real Rolex or Longines or Panerai were in your safe at home.
Yeah.
So that's how good the Chinese manufacturing has progressed.
Yeah. And that's almost unfair. But it's true. There was a period where we viewed China as they would knock off something that was made here and just make it worse for less. And that's how and then after a while, we realized they were making it the same for less, which is your Rolex story, the same for less. That isn't China anymore. That's a China that may have existed 20 years ago. It is not China today. China is the inventor. They're way ahead of Europe and the United States in inventiveness. They have us outclassed and outnumbered in engineers by 50 to 1. And so today it's China that is on the cutting edge of invention and of design. They're able to build a skyscraper in a month, where in America it would take, it's upwards of a decade. They can build ships, mighty ships, in a week to 10 days, and America can't get it done in 5 years. And even when they launch one, the toilets don't work and the laundry catches fire. They are so far beyond us now in technology and in automation and in sophistication. They're building some of the most beautiful structures, airports and dams and highways and high-speed trains that are so far beyond anything we see in America. It is as if America is going in reverse almost at light speed, and China is moving ahead forward almost in light speed. That is the difference, that we are distancing ourselves in the rearview mirror of China. And it's interesting too that America wants to present China, the military industrial complex wants to present China and Russia as the enemies. And they want to do so because their whole goal is control, and they want control of everyone's raw materials. I mean, for them, the whole game is control. They started the Ukrainian war to control the fact that Russia had this huge reserve of oil, gas, and rare earth elements, and they wanted to control it. So they break apart Russia, and they can do that. The Iran war, exactly the same thing. Those resources they want to control and decide how to divvy up. And China, again, is the same thing. What would happen with China is you have now an enemy that could swallow the U.S. And so they're up against a foe that their rhetoric is still shrill. The enemy is China. We got to have ourselves positioned. I read an article that says we're repositioning more troops in the Taiwan Strait to deter China from taking over Taiwan. Do you think the troops are going to make any difference? Are you that naive? First of all, do you think that U.S. has them to spare? And you think, second of all, they're putting them in the Taiwan Straits? What, are you out of your ever-loving mind?
Well, war has changed. War has changed in the last couple of years with Ukraine. The drones now control the battlefield just about everywhere.
Correct. Drones and missiles. America says we have controls over the skies with our aircraft. Big whoop. You know,
Yeah.
you
can have from 400 feet up.
Is worthless. Ships at sea are really worthless. They're a projection of a liability. You could no more use an aircraft carrier in a battle against China, the man on the moon. Now, I understand that China is building aircraft carriers just because they can, and because somebody said, well, America has 11 aircraft carrier groups, even if only 5 of them work at a time, battle groups. So we should have some, because we can build in a month what it takes America a decade to do, and our laundry, Chinese laundry, it's going to work. They do, but it's only because it's a hobby. I mean, they build 300 ships a year. Why not make an aircraft carrier to one of those ships? It's a rounding error for them. What is 1 or 2 of 300? In America, only builds warships and can't make them work. But the fact is that the Chinese and the Russians and now the Iranians have all proven that that's yesterday's war. And now it's drones and it's missiles and it's interceptors, and this rest of the stuff, it just doesn't matter. It's all a rounding error. You're approaching with floating coffins and body counts. And Trump says, well, there's 300 ships at the bottom of the sea, but they still have 10,000 fast boats. Well, we destroyed their air force. They didn't have an air force because they didn't want an air force. What they have is missiles, and they're all in hardened silos. And no, you didn't destroy them. And we have the capacity with our special forces. We could take Crag Island, and then they're going to eat drones for lunch. Mm-hmm. Israel sends their troops now back into Lebanon, and they're getting mowed down by drones. They drive their tanks on straight lines on predictable roads, and those roads are undermined by IUDs.
Yeah.
And they're just not able to think. And so what does Israel do? They buy another squadron of F-35s. How did that squadron F-35s work on October 7th? And aren't the prophets telling us that the next attack on Israel is going to be a much greater and more impactful version of Alaska flood? And therefore, how well are those additional squadrons of F-35s going to work?
They're not.
Is Israel's leadership that out of touch with reality? Is America's saying, the cost of the Golden Dome is now estimated at $1 trillion. And of course, it's Trumpian, which means that if he was actually given the authority to build it, it wouldn't be, it won't be 1 trillion, it'd be 5 trillion. Do you know that it's absolutely worthless, that it has a 0% chance of working? I mean, literally none. But all it does is enrich a bunch of people, but not the right people.
Well,
okay, go ahead, Roger.
Even if it were to semi-work with aerial attacks, there's plenty of other ways to attack the United States besides through the air. The Poseidon missiles, Poseidon submarines that the Russians have could do a lot of damage.
That Poseidon weapon that the Russians have, which is a super, super fast, 300 mile an hour torpedo fired from the deepest of all submerged nuclear submarines, that creates a tsunami of radioactive waves that race inland upwards at 500 miles an hour, unseen, undeterrable. What's the point? How are you going to defend against that? The only way you're going to defend against that is don't piss them off. Right. They now have hypersonic missiles that are Mach 20 and Mach 30. And they have, they're maneuverable such that they aren't ballistic anymore. So the defense systems don't work. And they're all designed to deflect the identification-seeking interceptors, so that the interceptor has 20 targets, doesn't have a clue which one is real, and you can't send up 20 interceptors for every missile. And even if you did, what are you going to get? Because the intercept, if it's not ballistic and it's not coming in on a straight flight plan, the interceptor has a 1 in 10 chance of knocking it out. And now you've got 20 targets, and of the 2019 are chaff. I mean, it's
you don't even have to attack the United States to take the United States out. You take away our air conditioning and our Wi-Fi, and we stop being to anybody. Honestly, we'll kill ourselves in bar fights. So it's
when I see Americans like Tucker Carlson, and he will have his beef on Trump for the Iranian war, and his beef on Trump with the Iranian war is he thinks he was controlled by Netanyahu, which I think is a bunch of malarkey. I think that Trump controls Netanyahu, not the other way around. But his big beef is rising gas prices. You can't be America first and have rising gas prices. That's your best argument against obliterating hundreds of thousands of people, of starting a war that's going to bankrupt the world, of doing something as stupid as the Iranian war and lying about it every single day. I won. And everything you sought to achieve is in worse position now than it was before you began. And the best you can do is, people don't like high gas prices.
Yeah, he steps off the Marine One, and all he wants to talk about, and all the press pool wants to talk about is, gas prices aren't so high, $99 a barrel, which isn't so bad. And have you seen the reflecting pool? It's going to be better than ever before. It's like, seriously, this is what you want to talk about. This is what you're going to let this man talk about.
The first 5 soldiers die in attacks against American bases that were largely abandoned among the Sunni Muslims, and he wanted to talk about how beautiful the curtains were and are going to be in the new ballroom. Right. Well, we're talking about a man that is so lost that our diagnosis of him as Satan 18 months ago is become irrefutable. Speaking of irrefutable, your next item in the news is this numbskull that has the 5 reasons he became a Muslim. And he starts with the Prophet Muhammad was such a grand fellow. And I'm going to tell you, the reason he became a Muslim is because he can't think. And that the reality is that Muhammad was not a prophet. And no one knows more about Muhammad than I do. And I've written 4,250 pages to explain exactly who Muhammad was using the oldest Islamic texts, their scriptures. And Muhammad was an illiterate dunderhead. He was a pedophile. He was a rapist. He was misogynist. He was an armed robber. He was an avowed liar. He was demon possessed by his own admission, and he never issued a single accurate prophecy. And so you're going to begin by saying the first of the 5 reasons you became a Muslim is because of the Prophet Muhammad. You're obviously a complete and utter dunderhead, or you were paid like Tucker Carlson. You get big bucks to promote Islam while you pretend like you're a Christian. And it's
I don't know where this guy got radicalized at, but a lot of this is they're being radicalized through universities and colleges. He may have gotten radicalized there, but obviously he needs to read Prophet of Doom.
Yeah, and as a Prophet of Doom, you went from 1 volume to 5 volumes in Goddamn Religion. It is absolutely irrefutable. The entire book is based on putting the Quran in chronological order, setting it into the context of Muhammad's life, using the biographical and historic hadith collections of Tabari and of Ishaq. And therefore, since the entire book is based on putting the Quran in the context of the Islamic scriptures as they were recorded by the 2 oldest sources, it is irrefutable. Islam has to be as they said it was. It can't be any different than Allah, the Quran, Muhammad, the first Muslims, or the Hadith. That is Islam. And that Islam is ruthless, genocidal. It is grossly immoral. It's totally irrational. It's everything about it is plagiarized. When these numbskulls say, well, Jesus, he is a loved prophet in Islam. And you go, good grief. Somebody told you that, and you're repeating it as if you know what you're talking about. No, the Esau, which is a transliteration of Esau, that is mentioned in the Quran, is because the people that finally put the Quran together in Babylon 100 years after Muhammad's death had access to the Gospel of Thomas. And what they decided to weave into the Quran came out of the Gospel of Thomas. And it's the dumbest piece of garbage in the world, which is why it wasn't, encapsulated into the church's canon by Eusebius, because, it has baby Jesus making a clay bird, and it made the clay bird fly. And isn't that a miracle? That's the miracle. It's just filled with absolute trash. And of course, it's where, Jesus wasn't really crucified because, how do you have a God who men kill? So they tried to resolve that little problem, and that made it into the Quran too. It's like people don't know that every reference to a personage in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms is there in the Quran because Rabbi sold Talmud stories to Muhammad, and he twisted them to serve his purpose. That is the only reason that the Quran has any veneer of religiosity, is because they plagiarized the Gospel of Thomas and Rabbi sold them Muhammad Talmud readings. That's it.
Yeah,
and
this guy,
everything is jumbled up and just a goddamn mess. He must tell the story of Adam 50 times and never the same way twice. And man is created from a congealed clot of blood. And men are different colors because they were taken from different kinds of mud. And
right.
That the sun chases the moon, or the moon chases the sun, and the sun gets worn out and goes nighty-night in a black muddy spring. And it wakes up from that morning spring after its nap and then begins to chase the moon again. I mean, this is the Quran. It's the dumbest piece of crap ever written. And you're going to say the 5 reasons I became a Muslim, and you're not going to deal with that reality? Or, they have Alexander the Great is the first astronaut, and he's going off to the extraterrestrials to convert them to Islam. And then when he doesn't like their answers, he plays Allah and terrorizes them and perpetrates genocide on them. And then he copies from Gog and Magog and the satanic book of Ezekiel and has somebody putting a finger in a hole in a mountain to keep the Gogians out. I mean, oh my God. Their version of Dode, his great skill is he speaks to birds. And Solomon has an ant army. And it all comes from the Talmud. And what doesn't come from the Talmud or the Gospel of Thomas is the never-ending argument about how utterly stupid everybody around the Kaaba knew Muhammad was. They said, you're insane, right. You're a plagiarizer, you're an absolute waste of breath, you're a madman, you're doing this for selfish reasons. Your God is no more God than any one of the other rocks in this Kaaba pile. So just go away. You're an absolute nuisance. And then Muhammad's excuse to all of that is, I made a deal, and I have to take the fact that I admitted that he had Alat, Al-Uzza, and Manat all become Quranic goddesses in addition to Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rakam, and Allah hadn't even been mentioned in the early surahs chronologically. And so when they say, wait a minute, I thought you had a monotheistic religion, and now you've got 5 or 6 gods. How many gods does it take to make a monotheistic religion? And he said, oh, yeah, I guess that was a mistake. But, I was speaking for Satan, and all of Allah's messengers speak for Satan. He has the satanic verses. He's laughed out of town. And so he decides, as I have a preemptive strike, I'm going to leave town on my own, and I'm going to fly a winged ass to Jerusalem. I don't know the name of the city. I don't know that the temple was destroyed 600 years prior to this, but I'm going to claim that I'm flying a wild ass, a winged donkey into Jerusalem, because that's the only place I can meet with Allah. And when I get there, I'm going to meet with all of the Jewish bigwigs. He doesn't even know they're all dead and been dead for centuries. And then I'm going to take my winged ass, and I'm going to go to visit Allah in heaven. And I can't get there unless I go through hell en route. And when I get to hell, he says that what I see is that it's filled with women, and all the women are hanging by meat hooks from their breasts. And he says, I asked the guardian why they were there, and said, because they weren't sufficiently grateful to their husbands. I mean, this is the nincompoop that you have signed on with. the man who treats women as if they were deserving to be hung from their breast by meat hooks. And you want to
Yeah.
promote this, you scum, you utter, deceitful, maniacal, revolting scum. I hope you choke on those words. I hope to find you in 7 years, and I'll make certain that you do choke on those words. You please look me up.
It's,
So what
Yeah,
do you
this
really
guy-
think about Islam?
This guy, he doesn't quote the Quran once in my 5 reasons. He won't. Okay. Anything that he talks about scientifically, it comes from the Talmud. Okay. This
Yeah.
idea that his first thing is Muhammad was such a great guy, was such a truthful guy, and all the people said that, when it's literally the exact opposite. We know
It's the
this
most
because
common
we-
most common argument in the
Common-
Quran. 500 repetitions is that Muhammad, you are dishonest, you're lying, you're making all of this up, you're a plagiarizer, and by the way, you're demon possessed. So no,
Right.
people didn't say that he was a great guy. The Quran itself says that he was slime.
Right. The only redeeming quality to this guy's video is the only redeeming quality is that it may make bad Muslims. So
Yeah, the difference between a good Muslim, according to Allah, is a Muslim that is killing for him. So all good Muslims are genocidal. And so you can be a bad Muslim if you're not a jihadist. And maybe there'll be people that will listen to him that are Muslims, and it will cause them to be rotten Muslims and be less genocidal. But what a waste of a soul.
yeah.
You know what
Well,
Allah
you know,
says about a peaceful Muslim, don't you? You know what Allah
kill
says
him.
about a peaceful Muslim, is that you're supposed to kill them so he can torture them in hell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there is
You
no
know,
moderate
it's-
Islam.
it's kind of interesting to me. If you were born into Islam parents, Islam country, that's one thing. But to be a Western and then go towards that, to me, it's just, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The guy's obviously being influenced by somebody. But why would you want to even go down that road after reading? If you just read the first 3 or 4 lines of the Quran, any reasonable person would throw it away.
You know, and the fact is that because of AI and the like, the actual likelihood of somebody making a conscious decision to become a Muslim is so rare. Islam is propagated in 2 ways: either by threat of death, and that was the primary way of propagating Islam. And if you are a Muslim, it's also the threat of death, because if you are a Muslim and you renounce Islam, your own family has to kill you. So this is how Islam is propagated. It's exceedingly rare for someone to actually choose it. And if somebody actually chooses it, it's because there's something seriously deficient
It's a bribe.
in their soul and in their brain. And otherwise it's not possible. But today, you know, when you're seeing something online, it's so much of it is fake. You know, I was told today by Richard, he was talking about this banner that goes across some of the things that Leia's producing with her songs, where we use AI to create much of what you see. And Facebook and Meta wants to put this big banner on it, warning, AI generated. And yet today, when I was going through Facebook to post some of the images and things here for us to talk about, 90% of what was there was promoting Islam, was promoting MAGA, was promoting Twistianity, and was using AI to create a false reality. It was 90%. I spend most of my time when I'm on Facebook, and I don't ever go to my personal page, the Craig Wynn page. I haven't been to that page in 3 months. I'm in an X in 3 months. But I do this one page that it's kind of hidden, and I use it because it feeds our website. It keeps everybody on the website in the news, and they can comment on these things. And I spend about a third to half my time blocking things, because I don't want to constantly be irritated with all of this Islamic rubbish. And yet it's everywhere. And the patriotic rubbish and the keyboard jihadists. Oh, God. And the Christian trash. It's just, stop it. Why are you giving me this trash, Facebook? None of this is true. They're so concerned that if you say something bad about Islam, even though it's the truth and it's seriously needed, you'll be banned. But you can promote the death cult and Facebook will applaud you.
Let's get you some more views. Yeah, it's insane.
God. I am so glad that we're out of the views game. We're not trying to develop a following. I've never been so relieved and being able to leave all that behind. I'm glad, it's like so many things. I'm glad for the experience. I learned from it. Mm-hmm. I'll never go back there. There is nothing in this world that would ever give me the incentive to go back to X or Facebook. They have literally destroyed them. The more they integrate AI into it, the worse it becomes. And it's not all AI's fault. It's those who programmed it.
Sure.
The young generation without morality, without judgment. And they programmed it with their own biases. And it's become this hideously confusing mess that is grossly anti-Semitic and irrational. And it's all designed to capture your constant attention through likes and through followers, and you have the body counts, just like the fighting the war in the past. You have the body counts. Oh, I have X number of new followers, and they do it all for followers. And what people don't even know is the majority of people you're interacting with are not people at all. They're bot farms. Why argue with them? It's this banks of telephones run by an AI algorithm, paid for by somebody who has an agenda. And that's who you're interacting with. Why would you do that? This is just interesting. This is foreign minister of Iran. And you listen to what they have to say. And I just never thought we'd come to a time like this. I'm probably the foremost expert in the world on Islam. And I know that it is a religion where the Quran actually orders Muslims to be dishonest. And the Quran says in the 9th surah that any treaty between a Muslim and a non-Muslim is not binding on the Muslim. So it's a waste of time to negotiate a deal with an Islamic entity because their religion orders them not to honor it. And they're duty bound to impose their God and their religion on everyone. And they will never acquiesce to borders or anything until they have imposed Islam on the entire world. And their means to do it, according to the Quran, is weapons. Fight to the death. And so when you're constantly bombarded with the Persians speaking on behalf of Iran, telling the truth, being rational, being well-informed, and the Trumpian and the media trumping Trump in America, lying and being constantly wrong. It's devastating. What kind of a world have we entered when America and its leadership and its media are constantly wrong, and the social media is even worse, and an Islamic government is the example of virtue. Hard to process.
It's like the Islamic world thinks the entire earth belongs to them, and everybody else is just trespassing.
Correct.
It needs to be either converted or be eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've taken a false god, and they've been fooled into believing that false god wants them to conquer the world. That stealing is lawful and good, rape is just fine. They have it. They're worthless human beings. They're non-Muslims. They have no value. Kill them, rape them, plunder them, steal their land. These are all of the good things. And if you do these good things, if you impose apartheid and genocide, that you'll be rewarded with multiple virgins in heaven. It's the dumbest of the dumb religions, and it's wreaked havoc with the world for 14 centuries. It has literally no value, and is exceedingly deadly and destructive. And yet it's in the media and in politics, it's promoted. On social media, it's beloved.
Yeah.
Let's try one more. Let's try one more. You thumb through a bunch of them. Any one of those would be actually quite good.
Back to AI.
This is that we won't stop on this one, but this is a typical keyboard jihadist. They put on big print there, Tel Aviv today, and they show a picture of what might be Gaza for all I know, but just an outright lie. This fellow is very astutely, and he's a very articulate guy. He sells he's online to sell his books. He's a professional influencer, but a fellow that's quite articulate, and he's speaking to Jordan Peterson, who has gone from being a psychologist worth listening to being a religious and political hack, and of the likes of Charlie Kirk, who is an absolute counterproductive influence. And he's telling them that no matter how much evidence that I bring against a person's religion, how convincing the logic is that I use to prove that the religion and everything about it is false, not only will I have no effect on changing the beliefs of that religious person with evidence and reason, they will turn on me, and it will actually reinforce their faith to be confronted with proof that their faith is untrue. And I thought it was just hilarious, while what he's saying is true, that he's saying it to a religious zealot in Jordan Peterson.
Right. Get behind me, Satan. You're just testing my faith.
Yes.
It just sounds like to me he'd have made a good inquisitor during the Dark Ages.
Yeah. Very, 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 very sad. His bit, if you happen to go on the blog page of yadayada.com and you listen to him, this one is just plain out funny. It's that new rat virus that affected the people on the ship. It's not contagious to any normal extent, but it is deadly. And they were finding it's passed on through rats and rat feces and that sort of thing. And so he was saying, so why did it appear on a ship? He was asking himself the first question, why did it appear on a ship? And then he found out because the ship had a specific itinerary to go to a trash dump to birdwatch. And he said, what idiot or what cruise line is going to put on their itinerary, we'll take you to a trash dump so you can birdwatch.
Right.
Seagull, condom, seagull.
The only thing better is let's now we have discounted cruises through the Strait of Hormuz. I mean that's the only.
Yes, yeah. Don't need showers. You'll wash up in the morning right on the beach, right?
Right.
Scott Ritter is. I love him and hate him. He has, in my book, become too much of a zealot now to be amongst the credible spokespeople, even though what he says is largely true. What's happened to him is that he is just fed up with the media in the West, both social media and also with the mainstream media, trumping Trump and pretending that America is winning the war with Ukraine and America is winning the war in Iran when we have been clocked in both places. And he is just so tired of the rhetoric in Europe and America blaming Putin for Ukraine as opposed to holding the United States accountable, and blaming the Iranians and the bomb for what's happened in that unwinnable war, that he has gone ballistic. And he is one now of, well, I've watched, every night I watch about an hour of YouTube programs because I want to stay abreast of what's happening in the news. And I find it much more effective than the mainstream media. And I can't stomach social media anymore. And what I've seen is that two things have happened, and they've happened ubiquitously. One is that every host will eventually revert to, it's all Netanyahu's fault. Israel is the blame for all of the evil in the world today. Jeffrey Sachs is an example of that, but they're all there. And the second is that one after another, they're coming to concur with what we have assessed of Donald Trump. He's not just wrong. He is just not suffering from some neurological malady, that he's demonic, that he is literally insane, mad, and demonic. And Scott Ritter now is one of those people who will say, you know, you cannot ask me what I think is going to happen, because you're talking about a demon who is mad, literally insane in the White House. And so it would be insane of me to try to predict what an insane individual is going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, the ebb and flow of this YouTube popularity, where folks start doing their thing and they're honest, they're open, they're doing their thing, right? Like Scott Ritter, okay, being brilliant in their niche, and they get some success, and then all of a sudden it becomes like the business model. How do I continue to grow? And so they start to use tools and things, and what happens is their YouTube algorithms, their tools they're using are telling them, this is the program. This is the program that got you the most views. It talked about Netanyahu. It talked about Trump. So that's where you want to start push, and that's where you want views.
All you have to do is the number 1 and number 2, and even now number 3, most popular voices in the world in terms of audience size are Tucker Carlson, Candace Owen, and Joe Rogan. And there is a common theme amongst them: conspiratorial outrage against Jews.
Yeah.
And so if you see Tucker having the largest audiences in the history of the world, far more than any mainstream media outlet can provide, and Candace Owens right on his heels, and Joe Rogan having been passed by them, but now trying to catch back up. And you find that there is one common denominator: a hatred, a conspiratorial plot, and a hatred of Jews. And so they have all moved into that arena, and they all echo the same trash. Now, there are some people, I don't think they do it for the algorithm. I think they just do it because anti-Semitism has been latent within them for a long time. Jeffrey Sachs is that kind of an individual. Jeffrey Sachs is somebody I encountered, about 7 or 8 years ago, when I thought I was the lone voice against the Ukrainian proxy war against Russia, where I had done my homework and I realized that it was all set up by John McCain and Lindsey and past U.S. presidents, beginning with George Bush. And I knew many of these characters personally, so I had a vested interest in finding the truth here, and was able to systematically prove that it was America that started the Ukrainian war as a proxy war to control Russia. And the only person that I encountered I counted no one in the first 5 years that would say that. But about 6 years in, I was passing a TV that we put in the kitchen, and it had Jeffrey Sachs on, and he was delineating the same points I had made about the path to the proxy war, using Russia, using Ukraine to kill Russians. And he had all of his facts, and they were all right. And I was just stunned that somebody else not only knew this, but had a voice and was communicating it. And and I remember sharing this man's name and what he had come to realize, and that he was exceedingly well versed in proving what I had been attempting to prove for better part almost of a decade by that point. And I continued to listen to him, and he then became one of the talking heads on the Iranian situation. And unfortunately, as a professor at Qatar U, Columbia University, he is a raging anti-Semite. And so you can't ally with anybody today. There's not a single person you can say, I can partner with that person because they are right about this. When I wrote Prophet of Doom initially, which you mentioned, Roger, earlier in their program, and I started doing some 5,000 to 10,000 radio programs on it and some television programs on it, I had all manner of people that had axes to grind against Islam that wanted to partner with me. And I chose never, didn't part with anybody, because they all had their own agenda. And you don't want to be associated with that agenda. Scott Ritter now has one. Jeffrey Sachs has one. They all have one. I remember I was recommending Glenn Dyson's show. He's a very articulate, erudite YouTuber from, I believe it's from Norway, and he has the best of the best in terms of these experts on the Iranian war, and prior to that, it was on the Ukrainian war. And he had the former Assistant Secretary of State and former ambassador to Saudi Arabia as a guest. He's had this man as a guest a number of times. And this was the day after, or maybe the evening after I had endorsed that show. I said, it's probably consistently the best in terms of providing usable information about these wars. And they also do a series, he does a series on economics, world economics, and the destruction of the petrodollar and the demise of the U.S. economically. And they're all very erudite. Yes. And this is not a show where you can slumber your way through it. You got to pay attention. Now, I'll have the closed captions up while I'm listening to the show so I can process it, because these are well-informed men who are typically college professors, or they have been engaged in the military or politics in such a way that they know their material. And so that evening, he had that same guest on. It's a very dignified old man that speaks with considerable knowledge. And he has moved to present Netanyahu. I can't stand. I think Netanyahu is a great disgrace to Israel, but I love Israel, even though I can't stand Netanyahu. And he was presenting Netanyahu as the second coming of Satan. And he said that what Netanyahu, second only to Jews killing Jesus, is the greatest source of anti-Semitism in the world today.
Yeah.
And Glenn Dyson just sat there and did nothing.
Right.
And I turned it off. I've never watched Glenn again. And I probably never will.
Well,
when you're going
brings up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Early on, when we started in social media, we cannot by nature be Kodesh and partner with people that are not also Torah observant. We just can't, because like you said, their agenda foresees
different than ours.
Everything other than that one thing that, we love Israel. We love Israel more than they do. We want you Jews to become Yahud. Okay. Again. And so
we want you to go from the Talmud to the Torah again. Yes.
Yes. Again.
We want you to go from Hashem to Yahweh. Yeah.
Yes.
Shub or no shub for you. It's a new song. It's just been Leah's just published Shub or no shub for you.
I thought she was supposed to be taking a break. I thought she was supposed to be resting.
I made her swear she wouldn't sit in that chair past 8 o'clock. We had, I have a whole list. I think there's 15 things on the list. These are the 15 new agenda items, and these are to guide your recovery and restoration. You don't sit in that chair, and you don't talk to anybody on the phone or chat or anything after 8 o'clock. After 8 o'clock, it's over for you.
Solid.
And by the way, you're going to take 2 days off every week and do nothing that is related to this. It's the fact of the matter is, I know you have a passion for the Torah, you have a passion for your people, you have a passion for Yahweh, and you have great style and a lot to contribute. But the fact is that it really isn't your job, and the burden's not on you. I've drugged you with me through time, and you've been great at times, but the burden's not yours. And I finally, first of all, I was made for this burden. I mean, I'm just, my whole lives, I've been geared for this burden. So it doesn't bother me as much as it would bother other people. That's Leah, and she's promoting one of these books, and she's in the midst of the Shavua harvest. So she has branding instincts that are superlative. I've never met anyone who has such style and such understanding of the Torah and can bring a sense of beauty and style together with words and music and images to tell a story. She's exceedingly gifted in this regard. But she's not built for it. Right? to speak for Yahweh means you're going to be hated by most people. And I'm going to tell you, most people can't handle that degree of hate. It's yeah, and she was particularly that Mother Goddess cult. I mean, they just absolutely went stark raving mad against her, and every member of that cult did. And that is a really tough thing for most people to handle. You have to get to the point where being slandered means nothing to you, where you say, "I don't care. You're an ignoramus. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not even bothered to respond to you." And she's cares too much to do that, so she can't deflect it. And she's like most people in that regard. She cannot reflect it. And I would say that if you were to take 99% of even our Torah family, if they were the ones who were isolated and they were the target, they couldn't take it either. You really have to go through a lot before you're in a position where you can take this. And not only was I geared for it, and I've had enough experiences in life and know what it's like to deflect. I finally reached a point of something that I began talking about yesterday that I think is the thing that made this all possible. I finally surrendered my free will. I said, I appreciate being able to have it, to make a choice, but I don't want it anymore. There's a lot that needs to be done. You're smarter than I am. Let's just get it done. I'll follow the instructions. We'll see it through. But one of the things that struck me is when everybody was having a discussion on how the proceeding is going to go for the Shavua harvest. And, somebody said, well, you have influence with God. Okay, so we talk. Do you think God is in a position where he's going to value my input over what he knows to be right? And do you think that I would risk the future of humanity by trying to convince God that my idea was better than his idea?
Right.
I mean, when they're saying, and people are starting to argue one side or another about this, and I said, wait, first of all, it's not my decision. I can tell you what my thinking is one way or another, but not only is it not my decision, and I have no influence on this, and I don't want to have any influence on it, I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm ready for either. I think it's important that we talk about what could happen and what the result would be and the benefits each way, so that you're prepared and can capitalize on the opportunity. But don't look at me like I'm going to make a choice here, or that you're trying to change my mind to get a choice that fits better with your sensibilities.
Yes.
No,
yes,
it's
absolutely.
not my decision. I don't want it to be my decision. And I finally decided I don't want to make decisions anymore. I now see what the script is. I'm going to follow the script.
Let the chicken farmer open the show.
I like where this script is going. And if somebody's going to open the door to a conversation that's a thought conversation, I'm happy to chime in, but I'm just going to follow the script.
Well,
And
I had this conversation with myself.
Go ahead.
I had this conversation with myself recently, and I finally convinced myself just to relax and let it happen.
Yes.
And
I'm not sitting back. I'm to date 5:30. I was in the chair going at it, and last night I left the chair at 7:30. I know that's a little more than a half day, but that's I've never been more devoted to engaging and making things happen. And what I'm sure you've seen, Roger, that I'm encouraging members of the Covenant family to join together with groups and produce the Thinking Torah, Loving Torah, Covenant Family, and Yada Yada Book Club series. And I don't want to egg into it. I've shown you, what kind of camera I would get if I were you, what kind of ear set I would get if I were you, and how you go about it. But it's not my job to put a firecracker up your behind.
No, I'm not talking about not doing anything. I'm just talking about not worrying about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're in a total agreement.
Yeah, they're worrying about just don't. Just do your thing and
yeah, do your thing. Make a contribution. and prepare for every eventuality that is consistent with Torah. Make your contribution as if you have no tomorrows, and yet have the resolve and the fortitude to stick it out for 1,000 years of tomorrow. And if you can do both, then you're where you need to be. If you're in the moment trying to capitalize on all that you can accomplish with an eye to what is going to happen 1,000 years from now, then you're in the right place. That is, that's outside the box, and yet being disciplined in your path.
Well, I've been following you since 2015, and in my eye, you're the same or more than you were then. I mean, you have not diminished. You've actually increased your output, and it's just been a wonderful experience to watch this. And I've run across a lot of tough hombres in my life, and you're one tough hombre. I got to tell you,
it is true. It is true. When you go from 60 years old and bodies start to fall apart, minds start to deteriorate, and you just can't shoulder the same burden you once could. And I'm working harder now and am more productive now in the last 10 years and even past 70, as we both are now, far more productive than in the earlier years. But to do that, you've got to be tough. And Shazak is what God loves. He just loves Shazak. Tough, firm, resilient, steadfast. There you are, Shazak. And, we all have our preferences, but I like manly men. I do. I like being around bright and beautiful women and manly men. If I'm going to have a friendship with a man, I want him to also be tough. I don't want him to be all girly, super emotional, super needy. I like having relationships and engage with men that are tough, resilient, have lots of experiences, have overcome many. I like it when you tell me you were there in your pickup truck and you had nothing else and had to find a place behind a motel to get a night's sleep, because I know where you are now. And that's the kind of guy that you can trust. That's somebody who has fallen and gotten back up. And those are the only people that are worthwhile. That's how you develop character. That's what makes you interesting. That's why you're so articulate today. You've been through it. So I like tough hombres. I think that's what Kevin was looking at too. I want you to tell the story about how you ended up, in a hard hat, hundreds of feet beneath the surface of the sea, doing welding on all parts of the world, because that's that kind of work is the kind of thing that a tough, disciplined person is going to do.
Yeah, it takes a certain mindset to be able to do that. Not everybody can do it.
Yes, and it's discipline. You have to. There is a procedure. I don't care how tough you are. You don't follow the rules of deep diving, well, you're not going to live through that one dive.
It can be hazardous, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I remember one time that I decided to say, I'm pretty resilient. I can, and I don't do deep diving, but I do a lot of scuba diving. I used to do a lot of scuba diving, and I've always been good at breath control. I can control everything about my nature. I can go to a doctor and I can pretend to be dead. I can take my pulse down to nothing, and I can, I've just had good control. And so, I can go down in one tank and I can be down an hour and a half where everybody else is up in 25 minutes. And so I was diving, and I don't like to dive too deep because everything interesting is in shallow waters where there is light. And so I like to swim with the fish. So my view is everything you want to see is in 50 feet or less of water, maybe 60 feet. And there's no reason to go down past 100 feet really on any dive. So I went out and had several really lovely dives in one morning. And I'm a pilot, so I had my own airplane there, and it was time to go to the next spot. And my airplane's pressurized, so I didn't think it'd be any big deal. Well, I got the bends because I didn't follow the rules. And I want to tell you, that is really painful. When you start having bubbles start breaking in your blood vessels, man, that does get your attention. It wasn't nearly as bad as when I got malaria. When you get malaria and your cells all throughout your body are exploding, that's a pain. It's an unimaginable pain. And I've experienced that kind of pain too. But
yeah,
I know what happens if you don't follow the rules and you're scuba diving, and
Well,
you'll
yeah,
go down much deeper.
I had a really good friend of mine get killed because of an arterial gas embolism,
Hmm.
and it's over at that point. My closest I came was I surfaced unconscious one time. I mean, they dragged me up on deck, and
Hmm.
some epoxy paint fumes had gotten in the compressor intake,
Right.
and
And I
I
don't care
just
how many push-ups
boom.
that guy could do if he could run up 10 mountains and back. You don't follow the rules. You don't know what the rules
Yeah,
are, and you don't think your way through it, and you're not disciplined, you're dead.
yeah,
It's the thing why I just don't like it when people are in these box conspiratorial cults, and they think that their opinions and their echo chamber matters because they're not thinking it through,
right.
and they don't have a disciplined, rational, full approach. And unless you can do that, what you have to say is often deadly. What you do is often deadly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly
discipline
right.
is as important as strength. You have to have both. You know, David versus Goliath. Goliath was stronger. He just wasn't more disciplined.
Mhm.
You know, David
Yeah.
attacked him with his words, got him off kilter with his words. One stone gone.
Mhm.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's the answer. Well, my friend, it's been great. You're my just a favorite to have here as part of the vlog on the vlog. What a wonderful discussion today. We actually got to some news today, and that's
Right.
a real plus. So happy to do it. I am working diligently to get these 3 books of Coming Home 4, 5, and 6 ordered. Currently, I'm trying to write a very thoughtful introduction as to how Chinook, as Noach, as Mydod, as Boaz, was reintroduced as Ethan Hawes Rocky with his wife to save Dode, who was once Adam, who became Shem, who was then uh, Eldod, and was a shepherd boy filled of promise. And how we had to, as Boaz and Ruth, deliver the kinsman redeemer from himself before we could deliver him to redeem the world. And to try to wrap your head around that in a way that you can convey it meaningfully is it's a good thought discipline, because you know that you've come up with an understanding that no one in human history has ever perceived, and that no one is going to accept naturally. And yet you realize it's the only way that God actually could progress with his story without interfering with free will and keep his people and his plan apace. And so you realize you have this great treasure. You need to share it, but you don't want to share it in such a way that you blow people's minds.
Right.
What
Yeah.
have you?
It's what facet do you present first, and what
Mhm.
lighting do you do on it so that it puts it in its best light? Absolutely, because it's what angle of attack, you know.
Right. And, it requires showing how desperate this is, requires you presenting what Dode did wrong. And when you list the 10 things that Dode did wrong, they were really bad. And you realize how far he had fallen. And these people that say, he in the 51st Psalm, that he apologized and God forgave him. No, he didn't apologize, and God did not forgive him, because why don't you read his after the Epsilon? Epsilon comes long after Bathsheba. Not long after, but it's after. So the Absalom revolt comes after Bathsheba. He failed that miserably, ran away, and then cried for the perpetrator. And he was a crappy father, which is why Absalom was killing Amnon, his eldest son, for raping his daughter. And Dode didn't do anything to try to be a proper Torah dad in any of this. And so God is so upset with Dode. I mean, they haven't talked for 20 years, not had a single direct conversation. They didn't. It is since the episode pulling the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, where Yahweh struck the man that interfered, and Dode had a conniption fit over it. They hadn't talked since that date. And so when this happens with the Absalom revolt, and God states, I'm infuriated with them. I'm revolted. I'm just disgusted with Dod. And he has to send Gad in because Nathan gave up. Nathan said, I'm tired of delivering this message. It's not doing any good. He wouldn't listen to Joab. That wasn't doing any good. So he sent Gad in to deliver the message. And what God said is, what you're doing, you're so full of hubris. What you're doing is you're having a census of armed men because you want to be independent. You think you can save Israel on your own because, well, you and I aren't talking anymore. So for that hubris, I'm going to give you 3 means of accountability. And that was really their and it was an indirect talk, but that was the last of it. And at that point is when Boaz, now as Ethan Hajraki, says, okay, coach, it's time to deploy, man. This gets any worse, we're not going to be able to fix it. But God gave him 3 options. And one of the options was appropriate. He didn't choose it. He couldn't handle being inconvenienced. He was so full of himself. He chose something that was plagued his people. And it was crushing. And so that happened afterwards. So if anyone wants to believe that 51st Psalm was an apology and accepted forgiveness, you'd be dead ass wrong. Yeah. No, it's not. And yesterday I also proved that the Ethan of Zeraki that is mentioned in Chronicles ain't the one that is sent here, not by hundreds of years, and in one case not by over 1,000 years. So God gave up. Literally, he was stymied. There was nothing he could do with his son. And if you can't get his son's attention and get that relationship back mended, there is no hope for humanity because he's the lone person that can fulfill Passover, Matzah, and Bikurim. And that's why I think you talk about being a tough cookie, Roger. To serve, first of all, to go into a king who's full of himself and is, willing to order other men's deaths and is lashing out at God. And to look him in the eye and say, let me tell you who I am and who you are. And you better damn well shut up and listen because this is your last chance. And humanity is depending on it. You're either going to go down as the greatest hero in the history of humanity or the greatest villain. And it's all going to come down to your response to what I have to say. So sit down and shut up. And that's the approach that had to occur in that situation. But one of the things I had to tell him is that you accept who you are. And there's a form of execution that's so painful. They're going to come up with a word called excruciating based upon that form of crucifixion. And it's going to happen to you. And you, sir, are going to go to hell. And you're going to be slathered with the guilt of every covenant member in hell. That's what you're signing up for. And I'm here to tell you I'm going to be there with you. Now, can you man up? Are you tough enough to accept who you are? And oh, by the way, I'm going to come back after all of that. And I'm going to take the blows for reintroducing you to the world, which means I have to obliterate the 3 most popular religions of the age. And then for you to come back and actually have a kingdom, I'm going to have to be bludgeoned to death again. I have skin in the game, pal. So are you going to listen or not? I'm not coming to you as a man of just words. I've talked the talk, sure, but I've walked the walk. I'm much tougher than you are. But my job is to toughen you up. Are you going to listen? That's how that conversation had to go. Imagine.
Yeah,
and if it failed, it was over.
That was a monumental moment. Whew, man, yeah,
a monumental moment.
That linchpin.
And I sat him down at that point and I said, You got nothing else to do. I'm over the next 10 days going to write 30 word pictures. We're going to call them mashal. The word will call them proverbs. I'm going to write them over the next 10 days, all of them. They're instructions for you to how to be the firstborn son, how to listen to your father who happens to be God, how to start respecting women, appreciate this family. I'm going to write them right before you. You're going to see what it's involved to write inspired books. And then, after I've set this example, you're going to start writing the Mizmor, which the world will call Psalms. But I'm going to teach you how to write, because that's going to be the next 10 years of your life. That's how it went down. And it worked. But for it to work, Ruth and Boaz had to come back. He was not let off of the training wheels in the next life. It was not, okay, you're a kid, here's a good start. You're in, you're going to be completely disoriented. This is the city that you named after yourself. This is the nation that you were king. This is the place where God says, I'm bringing you back to be king of forevermore. And now there's people who are beastly. They're called Romans, and they're in charge of it. And they're going to denounce you and going to whip you to shreds and then going to nail you to a torture stake. And your body is going to die, fulfilling Passover. And they're going to mock you, and they're going to create a false god that they're going to conceive to steal everything you've achieved. And oh, by the way, that's not the worst of it. Your soul is going to carry everyone's guilt into Sheol, into hell. Hey, you ready? Sounds fun, doesn't it? Now, do you think that the same boy that tripped over Bathsheba, that sent his gang in to get a cup of water from Bethlehem because he longed for the taste of it? You think that guy that ordered a woman who he just raped to die because she got pregnant and he couldn't handle the responsibility? You think that's the guy that's going to say, sure, I'll do that?
Yeah, no.
Dode, parentless, became Israel. And he was the one who stood up. And in the end, he stood up taller than anyone else. But it didn't happen by chance.
Well, this is why it resonates with me so clearly and so deeply. You see a man that's flawed. Every way a man can be flawed, he's flawed.
All of them, yeah. He is.
And yet here we are. With the Mashal, with the Mizmor.
Yeah.
And we have a path. The path is narrow. Mm-hmm. There's a remnant, and there's a reason why there's a remnant.
Yeah.
And it's this resonates, and it's I'm tearing up thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's like your life. You had lots of places in your life where things look pretty ragged, where you wouldn't want where you were to be on the front page of a newspaper, would you? No. And look what you became. Now, as you look back in your life and you told us the story, it was obvious that the heartache that made you what you are today is not a burden to you.
No, it's not.
It's the very fire in which your character was forged. Well, I do the same thing. I look at, okay, there's lots of things in my life that I wouldn't want on the front page of a newspaper, and yet they were put there. You know, I've had that experience. And the fact is, I don't look at any of them as being a burden. I wouldn't go back and redo any of them any differently now, because collectively they made me who I am. That's the furnace that I was forged in. And so just like with the Dode, his mistakes gave him the strength and the courage and the fortitude, the character to finish the job. And it's the same thing for each of us. That's the lesson that God is teaching through him and should be teaching through us. So on that note, I think it's a good place for us to end. Roger, always love to have you. Kevin, great job. I'm glad you served your penance in the beginning of this for putting me in the hot seat in our last two programs. Actually, as I've told everybody, I happen to agree with your conclusion. I think your reasoning is astute. I think that if it plays out that way, it would be actually in everybody's best interest. But I'm not going to agree that that's the way it's going to play out because it's not my decision. And to me, it's either way it happens, I see a benefit. So, but nonetheless, it opened up quite the avenue for communication, I guess, specifically for you, because you've been hammered with phone calls and emails and everything from people saying, how are we going to do it? Are you sure? And I don't think we want this. Let's talk him out of it. And of course, talking me out of it, what a waste of time. Wasn't talked into it. And what I think of it, only thing that matters about what I think of it is it becomes a teaching moment to help explain how we all ought to be contributors. And I wanted to share that if everybody was not on their own, we're still a covenant family, but over the next year, if everybody within this family engaged, like in those vlogs that I mentioned, the 4 different kinds of vlogs, or in other ways, to make a contribution, and the world was better off for it, and Yahweh saw a higher quality harvest, and at the end of that year, you can walk before Yahweh or don't and say, we did good, didn't we? We did good. I'm glad you gave us the opportunity, and I'm glad we came through. And, the next 1,000 years and the billion years after that is all going to be just a little bit sweeter, knowing that you gave us the chance to come through, to prove our character, to prove that we could listen and do. And I had the resolve to see it through, and you were right in trusting us. I just think that'll make eternity sweeter for everybody. And so why would you want to deprive the best and most mature of the covenant family of that satisfaction for all eternity? That's why what you said resonated with me. It just appeals to me as a father to say that, God, if I were God, that's what I would want. It's exactly what I'd want for my kids. So that's why when you made that statement, it resonated. I saw the beauty of it. And, if there's stress along the way, that's good.
That's the point.
Muscles have to be stretched and torn a little for them to grow, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. And we learn through these kinds of experiences. We grow as a result of them. And so I just thought it was brilliant. And I hope you guys choose to do Thinking Torah. I think it would be the just a marvelous foundation of that. I think that, I don't know all of the most thoughtful people in our community because I just don't have access to everybody. I guess we have the world's strangest cult because I don't try to mold anybody into my image or anything else. Most people that are in the community, I really don't even know. It's just it's not my job. I'm supposed to know Yahweh and share what I know about Yahweh. And it's just there's certain people that my job is impossible unless those people step up around me. And the people that do have all done so voluntarily. I didn't go out and say, I need you to do this. They've all stepped up voluntarily. But, the people that I know that their whole process is cerebral. Mike Beati, who does the Family Hour now with us, has been my fact checker for years. You can just see the way that he processes information. JB, I have enjoyed for all of these years because he's one of those people who prefers and is comfortable operating in the realm of constructive criticism. And he does it so beautifully, and he's so thoughtful about it that I think he would be marvelous at it. We have this Doe Comlin who I'm working to encourage, because she's an introvert too, and she's kind of off grid. but she's brilliant. You read what she writes. She's the only person that I know of our family that consistently writes at the same level that you do, Roger. And you read everything you read. It's a treat for the eyes and for the mind. And so I want her to, I want her to be part of it. I think that would be a marvelous thing, and I think it'd be very good for her. And I want you, Roger, to be part of it for the reasons we talked about in this program. And Kevin is the Elia of our group in terms of he interacts with people in a fairly Elia-ish fashion. You read something and say, I don't think that you actually meant what you said. Surely you didn't mean what you said. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you're going to be on your game if you're going to spar with Kevin. But I think that kind of edge makes the whole process so interesting. So there are people that I think are just perfectly suited for this. A really, really thoughtful person that knows his Hebrew and his Torah very well and has an outstanding vocabulary and is not a wallflower would be Dr. Jeff. He'd be another ideal contributor to this family. And then you could get someone like our beloved Shannon, who goes off and meets everyone and has had a world filled with heartache and joy. And it just is so real when he spends time with people and can react and relate to people on all different levels and ages and maturity and genders. He'd be perfect. He'd be by far the best to the Covenant family, and being the host of a show and interviewing everybody on a program like this. And there are people that have a really high emotional IQ that you can just see the level of support. Matt with Cats, who we've had on the program, I know that he is driven intellectually. He's a very smart man. And what he says is always thoughtful. And he would not consider himself, I think, particularly emotional, but he has a really high empathy for people. He's constantly reinforcing people. Loving Torah would be ideal for someone like that.
Absolutely.
And,
you are seeing more. You are seeing more in us as the Covenant family than we're seeing in ourselves, and it's that gentle nudging that we have to. And sometimes gentle nudging doesn't get it. That hey, let's just start, do this and start, and it will go well. Trust me. Yeah.
Yes, it will start. Go for it. Start. It doesn't. You're going to make we've got a couple of 100,000 invested in our equipment here. You don't need that. We've isolated. Rich bought it. Just to think of the difference in Rich and other people. He's sitting beside me. He knows that anything he sends to me to buy, I'm going to buy it. And yet he saw some things that he thought might be really interested. Didn't ask me to buy because he wasn't sure they were going to work. But he spent $1,000 on them. And here they arrive, and they're magnificent what they can perform. And it probably didn't even give a second thought to the fact that he had spent money doing this, because he thought, boy, this could be the answer for all of those we're encouraging to host programs. Rather than having to use your laptop camera or your phone camera, here was a camera you didn't need any lights. It focuses no matter how far you're away. You can hold up a book or something and it will refocus on the book. You can walk around the room and it will follow you around the room. And it has a microphone built into it.
Right.
What a great thing to have. And so, we're setting you up for it, but you ought to actually make an investment in it. And I know that people that are living on meager means, but $118 for a camera, microphone, and another 10, and girl optional, but another 10 for ears, maybe 30 if you want the really fancy ones. I mean, why not? I mean, what are you going to do with the money anyway? You're going to take it with you. I heard the other day that I have a favorite boat. It's one of the things I'll do it on Rhine is I've always liked boats, and there's a boat called Flying Fox that I've always been fascinated by, because it's set up for a sportsman that loves to be near the water, and it doesn't look like a cruise ship for a fairly big yacht. It's really stylish and pretty. and Homey, and the guy that bought it from a Russian designer is one of the emirs in the United Arab Emirates, and you just say, okay, and he has $400 billion of cash. All of that money, all of it. And his 3 yachts, of which Flying Fox is the smallest of the 3, they're ours. The fleet of airplanes, all of it. We get the wealth of our enemies. God's going to destroy them, but the things that have value, he's not. And so, you're not going to need a bank account where we're going. And just because I won't let you spend it on anything we're doing doesn't mean that you can't take an investment in your own ability to make a contribution. And
absolutely,
$150 isn't going to ruin anybody. So, buy that little camera. It's clever the way it works. And get a set of ears and start a show. We have the means to relate. Somebody can say, I'm one of those 6 people he's mentioned on Thinking Torah. I'm willing to take over as the host. Kevin, if you don't host it and set it up, then somebody's going to have to be trained on how to do it. But that's not a big deal. They, how many videos are there on StreamYard, which is what we use for a streaming service? You don't have to use StreamYard. There's probably 50 of them, but we use StreamYard. It works fine. It's not expensive. Sign up for StreamYard. Learn to use it. There's tutorials on it. Now, surely you and Rich know a lot more about how to use it than Leigh and I did. And Leigh and I were the ones, we found it. We started with it. We learned how to function with it. We weren't very good at it, but we made shows.
Yeah, that's
And
you go back and look a year later, and you're like, wow, look how our production quality, look how everything has just gotten better all along the way. Mm-hmm.
Of course, yes, much. The host hasn't changed much, but all of the stuff around him has blossomed. It is vastly superior to where we were. And it's, largely as a result of the 2 smiling faces in the upper left of our screen here. And by the way, that camera that's now on Rich, that is that little guy, isn't it?
Yeah, same one.
So if you move, you see, look, it follows him, keeps him in focus. He has a bright window behind him, and yet his face is still properly exposed. There are no lights of any kind on Rich. And look at that. Tell me that's not a great camera.
Yep, just got some bugs to work out.
Yeah, but you'll figure them out for people. Are you using its microphone or a different microphone?
Different mic.
Okay. All right. To Rich, and he's from the music industry, so
he's the sound guy.
Yeah, he's a sound guy. He's not going to use. We're not going to get Rich to use any kind of ordinary mic. When I bought my first Shure 7B, and Rich came in and says, Michael Jackson did his Thriller album with that mic. It has the following components on the inside. It's from a mic whose history goes back through the ages. These are the people who also use that mic. That was a pretty good choice for an idiot, a nice going. I don't know how you figured that out, but didn't use the word idiot, but the rest of it was true. Oh. And look, he's got Cara in his lap now. Yep, It's been an interesting life, hasn't it, since you've come here, Rich?
Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, look at Carl. Look up and say, "Oh, I love you, Uncle Rich." Yesterday we were at the end of the day. It was like 7 o'clock, and we're still both going at it. And Asher is all curled up, wrapped around Rich's feet, and it's just like, okay, I love you, Uncle Rich. I'm so glad you're here. And so it's been home, and it doesn't work without family. So without us contributing and working together, we're not doing any of this.
Absolutely.
All right, my friends. Lovely. I'm hoping that we're able to convince Mr. and Mr. Faceplant. Mariah.
They'll be Russell on Friday night. They will be on
Okay.
Friday night.
Friday night. Okay. My concern always has been on the family hour, is that we've expanded family hour, and the people we've added are wonderful contributors, but you can get to the point where it's a little bit overwhelming. This is a more workable group for a program like this. We're going to get family hour too large, particularly when we want to have them be able to express themselves. So, I mean, I'm okay having them as part of a family hour, but we can't have a continual blossoming. Family hour has got to actually shrink a little bit just to, I think, to be credible. Because it is, I'm so uncomfortable if I don't reach out and make certain that everybody has a contribution, and yet the purpose is for us to collectively make a contribution, not worry about each of us individually making a contribution. And so I understand they work, so it's difficult to do a program that's at this time. But what a great opportunity that is after they debut on that show, of them having the courage and the support to take one of those 4 shows. She is an avid reader. She's very bright. Their relationship is really sound. They could do Loving Torah, or they could do the Yada Yada Book Club.
And I've had them both in the studio when we talked the other day, and they both look pretty good on camera. I'm just saying. So
okay, and we need, with Leah moving out of the show into her behind the scenes role, because she is an introvert, and the being in front of the camera was really draining on her, with as many attacks as she had from people. And I can understand that, but a feminine face is something we need. Families don't work without women. And so having a feminine voice is going to be important. But I hope that we can develop this into many programs, and that they are all collectively conveying this message. And we just develop the website such that where we have basics now, we'll have basics as one category. But Thinking Torah, Living Torah, Covenant Family, and the Yada Yada Book Club will all be subsets, and all of the programs will be ordered for each of those. And they'll have their own structured community of people, where there's certain hosts and co-hosts and support hosts, and then rotating guests, and a structure for what they do. And this is important, and it's not difficult to do. I would say that any idiot could do it, but the last time I said that, we had a mutiny, so I won't say that. But
that's how I got here.
Yeah, that's how Rich got here. Rich said, "Oh wow, there's a job waiting for me. Okay, sign me up. I meet that criteria, those credentials." Oh yeah, that's the opposite of the truth. But nonetheless, we are in an environment where there is a wide open door. Contribute. There's such a shrill and prolific voice today of evil. We need the voice of Yah. All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll look forward to being with you again soon, and appreciate everyone's contribution. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yah on our next podcast.